begin, we are transitioning to Chromebooks. The school committee is, so just bear with us a little bit as we continue to log in and get our devices. Welcome. I'd like to begin the meeting for the Silver Lake Regional School Committee, September 8th. And I will start by asking for any public participation. Okay, seeing none, if we can move on to the approval of minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from our regular meeting on July 14, 2022.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Aye? Abstain? Opposed? Good, thank you. Okay, I will turn it over to you, Joyce.
So I'm very pleased to introduce Becky Collette, our new middle school principal. During her 14 years serving Taunton Public Schools, Becky has been a principal, grade 8 reading teacher, curriculum coordinator, and a Title I director. She was awarded her Bachelor of Science degree from Bridgewater State. She received a Master of Education and Literacy from Providence College, and she also holds a Certificate of Advanced Studies in Education Leadership from Bridgewater State College. Principal Collette has experience with driving positive learning outcomes by implementing intervention programs and effective instructional practices, leading curriculum revision, facilitating district-wide professional development on a broad array of topics. She has a passion for supporting all students, and she has been a wonderful addition to our Silver Lake family. So welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to meet you.
Nice meeting you too. I'm sorry that I rushed in right before.
That's okay.
I'll catch up with you afterwards, but welcome aboard.
Thank you.
You've joined a wonderful district.
I've realized that, and it's been a fun ride already, so I can't wait.
Great, thanks. Alrighty, food services. I think we're going to talk about rates this evening.
Megan Aaronholtz, our director, is here.
Thank you. I'm Megan Aaronholtz. I'm the food service director for the Kingston, Halifax, Bennett, and Silver Lake schools. So I'd just like to ask the school committee to approve an increase in the substitute rate of pay that we pay our Silver Lake substitute food service workers. They are not contracted workers, so we don't follow the pay scale in any of the contracts. But generally in the other districts like Halifax and Kingston, we pay our food service substitutes at step 1 on the current pay scale. So currently the Silver Lake food service substitute rate is $14.41, and I'd like to suggest to increase that to $16.16, which is the FY23 step 1 rate for the Silver Lake school food service workers.
Any discussion on that?
Motion to accept Megan's proposal to increase the rate to $16.16.
I'll second that. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Ms. Love, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. All right, because I'm working on the one that we talked about, so I'm going back. Elliot, shall we talk CTE?
Yes, hi, Elliot Glass, Director of Career and Tech Ed. Thank you for your service on our school committee and for supporting our schools. You know, it's not easy always to be in this role, so thank you. So I was asked just to speak briefly to our selection process for our outdoor construction projects, and so there's just a quick little 2-page, I'm going to walk through here. It says Career and Tech Ed criteria for building projects, and so we're primarily talking about our outdoor construction, which would be our carpentry program, and that's something that happens for our junior and senior year students. Our primary instructor is Mr. Tony Ruffini in that area. The program is obviously a live work, applied learning-based program that puts our students outside to work on a real hands-on project that has a pretty awesome, outcome. The most recent being right out here behind our middle school. And so just to understand, the DESE guidance is that students are in a program for 2 years before they work off-site. So that's why everybody hits that typically as a junior year in terms of where that falls in the curriculum. Our CTE Public Services, just so you know, are outlined on our website. They're public for people to see that we offer these services. We use a work request form that's also on the site and distributed as requested. We do, with Christine, work on liability insurance for our students to work off-site, so that applies to our allied health students, our horticulture students, our carpentry students in this case. As we work on selecting, especially our primary project from year to year, we timestamp those work requests as they arrive. They are housed in the CTE office, and annually, typically in the winter, we sit as a staff and we look at the ones that have come in to choose our large project for the following year. The biggest factor that we're looking at is the curriculum. And so we have a mission and a job to provide state frameworks to our students in a carpentry program. And so that curriculum is based on primarily ladder and scaffolding, framing, window and door installation, roofing, and siding. And so as we look at the projects that come in, we're looking at choosing a project that primarily meets the most needs of our curriculum. That's our job, to deliver that to our students. And so, as an example, we get 3 projects for every project that's full construction that includes all those elements. We get 3 projects that say, are you interested in siding your house? Are you interested in roofing, this building? And so when we can do something that's new construction that includes all elements of framing and window and door installation and exterior finishes, then we get everything into one project. So that's the biggest factor. We consider differences between residential requests and our municipal requests from towns, buildings. And so some of the things, just so you know, if you're new to our committee, that we've done in the last 10 years includes Halifax's water department or Pope's Tavern roof. We've worked for the Plimpton Fire Department, building stairs and landings outside the building. Ball field dugout benches and trash receptacles for Kingston Puddle Street Fields, Kingston Senior Center. We've walled off their dumpster area to make it a more attractive place for their trash to be kept. We've worked to put in pavilion decks and handicap accessible tables at Grays Beach. We've landscaped around the Kingston Fire Station, buddy benches at KIS, bookshelves at the Holmes Library, roofing the gazebo on Green Street. So there's a number of things that come from our town partners, as well as, again, residential. So we're looking at frameworks, we're looking at residential versus the town requests that come in. We're looking at location, proximity to where we are. We only have so much time, with our students to get to and from a job site, for students to change, to get into a vehicle, to unpack, to go to work, and to get back before they have their next class. On site, we're considering all factors that revolve around safety, space, storage. We typically, our large construction project leaves a 14-foot contractor trailer on site, and there has to be room for us to leave that safely, to access it, to maneuver, and work safely with our kids. So over the last 12 years, if we go back, 5 of those years, the projects that we chose were for us. They were Silver Lake projects. So we had built 3 garages on campus. There's 2 that started off primarily being for the athletic program. There are some other maintenance staff related uses as far as the storage goes, but there's one back here by the baseball fields, and there's one behind the tennis courts. Those are 2 garages that we built, and then obviously the one for the middle school that's just behind the school, as well as siding the Lake Street garages. So just looking at a typical year in a visual, so on the second page, this is what last year looked like. So the second page has 3 pictures. One is obviously the middle school garage that we spent all of our time at. We fill the year with other projects that, again, meet our needs best, but also allow us to participate in our community in a meaningful way. And so we do have all different kinds of customers that come to us. The handicap ramp was one that we were able to fit in at the end of the year. This was a family that did have some needs. They had to secure funding with some outside agencies. They were able to do that. We were able to prioritize them when that funding was secured. It allowed us to get into building code around ADA compliance and handicap accessibility. And then a small town project last year was in Halifax at the fields for Halifax softball. And it was a renovation of some of their dugouts on the fields. And so just as a quick overview of how we're making those choices and what we're looking at and what comes to us, that's it. Happy to answer any questions about that.
I just have a question about what information is available to the public when they're making that work order or the work request form, like, or the details around the factors that are considered like posted for them, or is that, is there like a, here's what you need to have in order to be considered?
Yeah, so there's a conversation that I have with that customer, and we don't have an influx of work requests that I'm not able to have dialogue with everybody that submits something. So I return a phone call or an email, and we kind of talk through some of the specifics of their application. And I've learned over the years, it doesn't benefit anybody to kind of hold them out on a waiting list for 5 years only to tell them that the project wasn't a good one for us. So I'm very honest with people up front, as best I can be, that this isn't a project that really we're a match for you on, and this is why. Or based on these factors, this is something we can put on a waiting list, and we've already committed to something for this year, so just know it would be something we'd be considering for a year after that. But yeah, we do have a dialogue about it.
And then just around like the advertising of it, like is it something that, I guess, how do people know that this is a service that is offered through the school?
Yeah, so we have to be careful how much we advertise. We only have so much capacity, obviously, and we're talking about, again, we have one primary project that came here that you voted to support last year, and that's a residential two-car garage, which has kind of become our bread and butter in the carpentry program. A detached two-car garage is a perfect project for us. It's in Kingston. And so, again, we only have so much capacity to take projects. So I think we're very typical to other vocational schools in making that information public. I would say in our community, with a lot of people, we're no secret, that our programs have been established and in our community for decades. And so we do have consistent things that come our way.
Thank you for both answering the questions and your overview.
Thank you. Listening.
Elliot, thank you so much, not only to you, but also your staff. You run a great program. You've grown it considerably since you came on. I think when my kids started, you were down at KES maybe at the time.
Yeah.
So watching the transformation not only of your career, but also of this program, it's just been a joy. So I appreciate that. This has been, an issue that I've raised a couple of times. So I appreciate you coming to us with information. I appreciate all this detailed information, and the project list is super impressive, and the amount of contributions that the program's been able to make to the 3 towns and the people in it is just remarkable, and I give you guys a lot of credit for that. That being said, I still feel like the criteria for selection are unclear. What I heard from all of your material was, 1, it's answering the frameworks. 2, it's proximity, so you can get the students there, and being able to lay down your equipment or leave equipment trailers there. I would like to see another criteria that's related to need. I'd like to see some level of need-based. I'd like to see a form that actually has a criteria on it, that has points that should be assigned for each area, that when you get a project in, you can clearly document, not only for the selection that point, but also for looking back and so this is why we selected this project, because it ranked high on our criteria list. So I feel like this is a lot of great information, but I would argue that the criteria for selection aren't specific enough, aren't quantitative enough, and lack the need-based aspect to it.
So I did ask that question of other vocational directors, and there wasn't a single response I got that said that anybody considered financial need, in that equation. And so I just think as a school district, we get into really muddy water trying to figure out how we make those determinations and then what kind of choices we have to make based on those factors. And so as the vocational director that's responsible for the educational components of our program and where we put kids to work and the choices that we make to align a job with what they need from a curriculum standpoint, that's just one that personally I'm not interested in being a factor in how we go about making a choice. And I think as a school district, we would really have some interesting and sticky, ground to kind of weed through to figure out how that all works. But I would tell you, again, across the state, from a career and tech ed standpoint, I don't think that that's at all factored into schools making decisions about where kids go to work.
Yeah, I'm not arguing that it's the highest criteria or ranked or weighted the highest. I mean, in fact, I would argue frameworks and proximity should be weighted higher than need per se, because it's what your program requires to function. That being said, we already waded into a sticky situation last year when we approved that project that you brought before us, which I voted no on, not because I don't think it's a good project for the frameworks, but because I didn't see the need-based evaluation on it. And we are essentially assigning district resources to private individuals to get rates that are significantly lower than the market for these types of services, which is good for the kids and their education, but I'm just suggesting that there might be a need-based thing. And so that's my input, Madam Chair, and I would still like to see that added to the criteria.
I guess I would throw it up to the other members of the committee for any comments. There's no motion, but does anyone else have any thoughts there? I'll share, while I think it would be nice ideally, I hear what you're saying, and I don't know that we could accommodate that element entirely. And I would be looking to continue to do the most robust projects that can be found. I mean, how do you, I don't know how we would get, financial information from people to understand their financial situation, verify their financial information. Russ joined us just a few minutes ago. I don't know if you have any thoughts from any other district you might represent as well, but I don't know how we would go about as a school district verifying, we're going to get people's W-2s and tax returns and, things of that nature. I don't know that that's something we could accommodate.
I'd also share that, we're just talking about carpentry, right? But our programs do things for people in the community in all of our areas. And so I think as a school, we've done a great job at being sensitive to families that need help sometimes. And we have worked out payment plans and try to help people along with a lot of things. And the automotive program is one of the biggest examples. We have helped keep people's cars on the road sometimes that can't make payments or that don't have the financial resources to utilize a dealership in the same way. And so there's some things that we're able to do like that because of who we are and what our mission is sometimes that have worked for us, I guess. Again, and across the board, the carpentry is the biggest project that we're talking about, but there's a lot of different public services that run through the program.
Any other thoughts on this?
Yeah, my heart's in the same place that Leslie Ann's sentiment is, but again, the quagmire is the quantification in the criteria establishment in that regard. And from what I was saying, it seems that the program is already taking into account needs-based situations when they come before him without muddying the waters of the selection process. So I would be uncomfortable forcing the issue of making it a quantifiable check off the list because I don't even know what direction to give Elliot in order to create that.
No other, this is good to vet. This is one of the purposes of this committee, is to vet ideas and vet change and consider alternatives. That's what we're here for. It's part of what we're here for. So this is a good conversation.
It just seems a little informal and subjective to me, that's all. I'd like to see it more formalized.
I think one of the things that is possibly a possible middle pathway, and I don't think we're going to solve this tonight, but there's a difference between need, say, of individual families where you'd be trying to quantify, can they really afford this? And I don't think anybody here wants to be in that game. Versus sort of total need or impact on a community level project. Like if you're stacking up Halifax dugouts versus Silver Lake garages, that's something we could score because we can talk about much more meaningfully. I'm thinking, you know, the expenditure trade-off and the level of need at the community level and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So I think that's at least a possibility to look at in terms of ranking, you know, what would be sort of essential community projects versus, you know, high on the priority list versus kind of nice to haves at some point.
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of building off of what both of you have said, it does seem feasible to have a publicly posted rubric with criteria and sort of these are the things we consider and here's the point value that's given to them. And I don't think that sounds, with need outside of that, but that seems outside of the realm of possibility to have that information available to people so that there is some more transparency. Because I could also see a sticky situation where people may, and I'm not implying that this is the case, but feel that there's some favoritism that may happen over, oh, you knew this person and that's how you got selected, or why didn't I get selected, and not necessarily having a clear understanding of what the criteria are on. So the same way we might hand an assignment to a student and say, here's your assignment and here's the rubric I'm going to grade you on, we could say, here's this opportunity we offer to the public and here's the criteria we're evaluating: proximity, ability to have these features, and perhaps that information is there already.
I just want to piggyback on Emily. I completely agree with that suggestion. And as educators, I think, I'm an educator myself, we're used to creating rubrics of standards we may already have, so that's not super difficult compared to introducing a new criterion and then trying to come up with how would we assign points if you've already got something in place. It is in place. You gave it to us tonight. So putting that into a rubric, I think, is very straightforward and would be more feasible. I'm not sure on what timeline, but I think it's possible.
Jason?
I would suggest that we give Elliot some time to digest our feedback and then to bring this forth to the CTE subcommittee, and then we can work with Elliot from that smaller group and then report back to the larger committee.
Does that sound okay with you?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. I just add to that, I with all due respect, Jason, I brought this issue up 3 years ago and it still hasn't been resolved, so I'm hoping that considering the CTE committee doesn't meet very often, that this will be on your next agenda. Thanks.
Okay, and I think the one other thing we want to talk about with respect to CTE is the idea of Pembroke.
Yep, so just maybe a brief update. As you probably know, we've had growing numbers, right, and a big influx of students last year that applied, more so than we've ever had. And so it was over 50% of the 8th grade student population that submitted a CTE application. And so as those numbers have gone up, right, there's some other factors at play there. And we've always been able to tuition in some Pembroke students, as you know, that are part of our budget. There's obviously a long-standing relationship with Pembroke over their students being able to participate in some way in our program. We have an admissions policy that was rewritten last year, as everybody in the state was asked to do that. There weren't substantial changes to the admissions policy, but as our numbers have gone up, and this year in particular, it wasn't possible to even get to the out-of-district applicants, right? So we filled all of our seats with in-district applicants. And so Pembroke, right, and their superintendent and school committee say, oh my goodness, you know, how did this happen? And we're in this situation where our kids didn't have any avenue to pursue And so they have an interest in kind of having a conversation around something that might be more formal in an agreement, that might be outside of an admissions policy, and this is where none of us are experts on this. And so Jill and I have had some conversation with Aaron Obie, the superintendent in Pembroke. And so Aaron Obie, the superintendent from Pembroke, is asking, is there something that you're willing to do with us that might designate, say, a certain amount of seats for Pembroke students on an annual basis? And so Jill and I have a call with a couple Department of Ed folks tomorrow, right? Yeah. And so there's an associate commissioner on there, and actually their response kind of led me to believe it's not something they get into often, and they really needed to pull a few people together and do their homework and get back to us with some guidance. And so that's what tomorrow is. We have a meeting to get some guidance from the DESE folks about what we might be able to consider if you were interested. And so I do think there could be a mutually beneficial agreement in something like this. And so we have 105 seats for our exploratory class. That's our 9th grade group of students. That puts 15 kids in every program, which again is our kind of teacher-student ratio that we're working with. We have a full house, we have a waiting list, and so you know, there's real money obviously attached to those Pembroke students. We have some years have 40 students. It typically is around 10 kids per grade, roughly ballpark, historically, that we've had from the town of Pembroke that attend. If that's $250,000 in our budget, and in 3 years we don't have that because we continue to fill with all in-district kids, there's a consequence to that, you know, in a different way. And so what would it mean to say that we designate, say, 10 seats on an annual basis to residents of Pembroke? Are we interested in that? So I think that's kind of where our conversation is tomorrow, just to learn about the process, if there's some kind of agreement that can be looked at if all parties at both school districts are interested.
Are we limited in our number of seats?
Yeah, so you only have the amount of seats that really you can obviously plug kids into classes in, and so most CTE programs in the state have a 15-to-1, so you know, it sounds like a small class until you see 2 classes present in the metal fabrication shop and you see 30 students on the floor with 2 teachers, and it looks scary. So that's the reason for that number. Yeah.
Are our main constraints on that? I mean, let's just say that we have 500 applicants and we theoretically could go to 215 students just based on demand. Are the main constraints on that the facilities, or the hiring, or both?
We have a long conversation. So we've grown over the years, and so since I've come on, we've added early education as a program, and obviously most recently we added allied health. And so that opens up other opportunities for students. It opens up kind of some awesome potential for our school and opening up new programs, and there's a lot of programs in the state to consider. And so obviously, maybe there is room for growth in that area if as a school we decided that was a priority, right, against something else. We do have space constraints. You know, I've been for years approached by electrical contractors in the area that have said, we have such a need for electricians. Is there any interest in starting a high school program? We have no room to add an electrical shop in the school. That's not happening without an addition on the building, right? But there are some types of programs that don't take up that kind of space, that might use a more traditional classroom space. And so if we were interested, it'd just be conversations around allocation of space and resources and priorities. But that obviously it does take a few years for things to happen like that, if I answered your question.
Go ahead. I mean, I think as a school committee, we have to ask ourselves in some respects, what would Pembroke do if they were in this situation? Or what would another school district do if they were in this situation? I mean, I can totally understand the revenue issues. I mean, that's real, especially given our budgets, and I don't want to discount that at all. It's something the committee needs to consider after your meeting with DESE and what you find out. But I mean, I think most school districts would look to their own children that are enrolled as priorities, understanding that there's a trade-off, like you said, with the financial aspects of it. But I do have to wonder what Pembroke would do if they were in this situation. I have a pretty good idea of what they probably would do, but that's just a guess on my part. So I think those are the two trade-offs you're going to have to weigh when you come back with this information.
Agreed.
And to put into a little bit more clarification, just the financials, what is the tuition per student from Pembroke?
So it's a state assigned tuition rate that changes every year. We're around 11,000.
I think last year was like 12,400 was the tuition.
Yeah, so that's the ballpark per student that Silver Lake's been assigned that we.
And it does change yearly.
And we do need to offset that number with the extra Chapter 74 funding we get for each pupil of our own that goes into CTE programming, which is about $4,700 above Chapter 70. So we have to subtract that away from what we get from Pembroke to understand the true revenue implications.
I wasn't making any argument that we put other school district kids first. I was more making an observation that it seems like with the advent of allied health in particular, and I could be wrong, but it just seems like the demand is up and that we haven't stretched far enough to meet it. Now, there's a lot that would go into that sort of, calculation. Is it something where we're, despite extra revenue, losing money on it, or is it something that we're breaking even or doing a little bit better or something like that? But it would seem like, given what I feel like I've seen the last 2 years or so in terms of applications, that there's an argument for a plan for a pattern of growth as opposed to, constraining and maybe doing a trade-off like this.
And it's not unique to us. It's a trend going on in the state. There are waiting lists everywhere for these programs.
But it's a pathway response as well to the pure expense of college. I mean, if you just are not going to want to pay $60,000 a year to go to Stonehill or something like that, then it's a very good alternative pathway.
The trades are starved for good employees. Absolutely, all the trades are starved for good employees.
Well, we have lots of four-year college students, obviously depending on the program and what they're heading off to do. But as an example, I bumped into one of our students who graduated 2 years ago at Dairy Twist getting an ice cream, and he had just been hired by Cape Wind to weld down the Cape on the project going in offshore, and he had been hired at $68 an hour, and he was ecstatic and really excited about where he was at. So there's real jobs out there with real money for the programs that we support, and there's been good job placement for our kids and good post-secondary outcomes. So it is working. And I feel like I need to say Pembroke has really been a great partner for us. I've built a really wonderful relationship with the superintendent, the principals, the guidance department at the middle school. I am welcomed into their school. I'm allowed to present to their students. And so we've had a good just relationship and exchange, and I think that's been important for us. Again, there's a lot of history, and I care about that stuff. I think there were conversations at the time about our ability to continue to support their kids. They obviously don't have, as a town, a relationship, say, with South Shore Technical in Hanover. They weren't part of that agreement back in the 60s when that school got off the ground. So, thank you.
Yeah, just one more thing that's kind of related to everything the last 3 or 4 people said is with demand so high, if we do allocate these spots to Pembroke students and we're effectively capping off the number of Silver Lake students, are we then losing Silver Lake students to, say, Norfolk, Aggie, or other technical programs, and then we're losing their Chapter 74 funding? So I think that's something else we also need to consider.
Yeah, so, I mean, just my quick, I don't think so. It's a real specialized student that's interested in one of the agricultural schools and to travel that distance for high school. And those schools are very competitive. We don't have a lot of kids that are applying or getting into those schools either. And a student now has to participate at Silver Lake. If they're interested in even going off to a program that we don't support, the state law now requires the student to come to our school because we have an exploratory program for 1 year. So it wouldn't necessarily be an influx of kids going in that direction. Just my quick response.
Just to kind of build off of what has been said, but I would encourage, because it sounds like CTE will be meeting soon either way, outside of this conversation, to discuss the prior conversation, that we are really having some serious conversations about what are viable programs that we could be bringing in, because I don't think this trend is going to change. The cost of post-secondary education is astronomical, and the opportunities in the trades and the dearth of workers in those trades all show that vocational programming is in need of more opportunities for young people. And so if it's going to take a few years for us to get a program launched, I think that we should feel an urgency now and not be thinking that this isn't, even without the Pembroke conversation, the fact that we have to have students on a waiting list, to me, feels wrong. That we should be able to provide every student in our district the opportunity that they want, and if what they want is to be in a CTE program, there should be 0 students, in my opinion, in Silver Lake on any waiting list for a program. I know that's not sustainable with what we have now, but if that's going to take us 5 years to get there, then we should be having the important conversations that need to be having now. So I would encourage in that CTE conversation, and maybe that comes back then to capital planning conversations of what is it that we need to be thinking about in our 5-year, 4-year, 3-year, 2-year plans in order to make that happen, because it will be a shame if we're sitting here again next year and we have CTE students on waiting lists and the year after and the year after, and that's a lot of students that didn't get the education that, in my opinion, they should have gotten from their district if we have vocational programming here. So,
I agree with maybe half of what you said, Emily, only because I don't think that waitlists are the worst thing in the world. I mean, for a program maybe I could see that, but like there are often times that there's electives or other programs or majors that you might want to do that there are wait lists for because of other priorities. So I agree with your sentiment completely, but as a whole, we're not a vocational school. So there's, we have the general ed and we have the CTE, and they're very well married together. I'd love to see everybody get the opportunities that they want, but the reality is that wait lists are, oversubscription isn't the worst thing in the world at times. It took Allied Health 3 years to get off the ground, I think. Is that right? It was 3 years of planning, maybe?
Yeah, well, when we launched it, it was off the ground, but it took us
a while
to get to it. Yeah,
Yeah.
It was 3+ years of planning, yeah.
So if there's like a niche, I think like the electricians program, and that's going to take 3 years to go, I'm not saying, I don't know how long. Then I agree, let's focus on that. But just to sort of say we shouldn't have any wait lists in any areas, I think kids move around a lot. They do that exploratory year and then they kind of slot in somewhere, correct? They have to pick 2 specialties or something?
Yes, yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
And then they slot in somewhere if they're effective in your overall program, they get to slot in. So, I don't know. It's complicated.
Yeah, Lucas.
I wanted to say I agree, I'm on the same page what Emily is, so I think we should start expanding CT program right now and start thinking about it, how to accept more students. We have obvious problems, we cannot keep the seats, the education to the kids. We have too many kids and we don't have enough places in the CT program. And because I'm a member of the CT subcommittee, I would like to do everything to expand this program. And for me, CTE program is the biggest assets of this whole school. That's my opinion. So, and if I can make a suggestion, I would like to ask if it's possible to think about the IT program, CTE IT program, computer program, because
It's at the top of the list.
the equipment of this is the cheapest equipment you can get. It's much cheaper than welding equipment, than carpentry equipment. You just need a couple computers, you can teach kids programming, other stuff.
Yeah.
So I would like to see some progress on that, if possible.
So the committee right now has a very nice mix of newer members with fresh ideas and a lot of energy, and a couple of us members who've been around for a little while. Just so everyone knows, people are on subcommittees in a year-by-year basis. So some of us have not been on subcommittees before, and we're just getting into them now. I haven't been on CT in 4 years. I'm back on it again now. One of the last conversations we had with Elliot as we were rolling out the Allied Health program was what is next. And it was basically a computer technical or a technician type program, just like you're talking about, Lucas. Again, this is almost like political legislation. It takes like that seed, you have to do the research, visit the other schools, file it with the state, and we actually have to run it before we get the approval of Chapter 74 funding, get it fully vetted out to get those extra dollars. So it is quite a process, but I know that Elliot already has some of that work in mind. Again, sometimes he has an idea, and sometimes he can't see that to fruition because of choices we make at the table. So it's nice to hear the commitment from the committee right now to let Elliot continue to dream up some of those ideas, and the fact that we will support the resource allocation for that program as well.
Yeah, very well said, very well said. And that is an excellent idea, and it's just ironic how it dovetails into what is on the top of Elliot's list. So I look forward to seeing what else we do with this idea.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Elliot. Alrighty, folks. Next, the MOA for the resource officer.
So in your packet tonight, you'll see a proposed memorandum of understanding for our Silver Lake School resource officers, proposed by Chief Swain, and it's in accordance with the state regulations. I'm asking for your review and possible vote tonight to approve. It has been reviewed by our counsel, Attorney Duperret, as well. It is in keeping with the state template.
Any questions from anyone on that? Okay. If not, could I have a motion to accept?
Motion to accept the MOU for the Silver Lake Resource Officer.
Second. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next is the second reading of several policies.
So first of all, I'd like to publicly thank the policy subcommittee for coming together in late June in order to make sure we passed some very important policies to protect the district legally, with some updates to Title IX. We also had a first read of several policies. I would appreciate a motion to waive the actual reading of the policies.
So moved.
All those in favor?
Thank you very much. I'm going to make a motion right now. If anybody has any questions about any of the specific policies, I'd be happy to answer them after I make the motion. So I make a motion to accept the following policies as the second read: ADF, BHE, IHBG, IJNEB/R, and CBI.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on that? Oh, Jason, I'll just go over you.
We're good?
None? Everybody fine? Okay. All right. All those in favor of those policies? Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Excellent. We're rolling here. Okay, the next agenda item, the Camp Norse. Last we met, we were asked to approve Camp Norse, and we had a lively discussion that night. The director of that school was unable to attend that evening, so we had no ability to ask questions or anything. So fast forward to where we are now. We found that we do need to approve this school offering for the students of the Silver Lake District in order for them to attend. In doing so, there are many elements of the school Camp Norse that we should look at, administration should look at, be comfortable with, and agree, because we actually are. I think Gordon had said at the last meeting, it's not a rubber stamp. We do need to vet this. So Jill had asked for a list of materials from Camp Norse at least a week in advance of this meeting, so that we could review that material as committee members as well as the administration. And there was follow-up and still no receipt of any materials. Materials were sent just before midnight last night. There's just no way. There's no way. So we will go back and tell the director of Camp Norse that it just didn't meet our deadline. There's no way to do a, never mind comprehensive, not even a cursory review of materials with no little time. So I am hopeful that at the next regular Silver Lake School Committee meeting, we will have a time to have digested that material, have time for administration to take a look at that material, and have some recommendation as to whether we should vote in approval or not. I have to tell you, in all the years I've been on a school committee, this is the first time I've gone through this exercise. I've never gone through this exercise before. So.
I have a question. Oh,
Sure.
What is the impact of us not approving this for the school, for CU?
Well, that's an interesting question, because technically we haven't yet, and they're up and running with 9 through 12. So, and I know there was at least one student that wanted to attend 9th grade there. I'm suspecting perhaps that student's in that.
So originally, if they had not provided the information, we would have reported the concern to DESE. I think ultimately, depending upon what we're provided with and our concerns, we would consult with Attorney DuBray and see what may or may not need to be reported to the state. But we wouldn't necessarily be involved in that process. We might more or less be involved in what may or may not need to be reported to the state.
Sure.
So your review, DESE has this like checklist. It was out years ago, and I'm not even sure it's on their website anymore, but we were using it, most schools do. So you look at the checklist, you ask for the information, the committee reviews it, as long as it looks satisfactory, you vote in favor. The DESE really does a full review. So it's really up to DESE ultimately to make sure the school is, you know, a well-functioning school in your location. But you should do the preliminary review as well, and it just isn't possible tonight. So at the next meeting, we'll likely be able to do it. But I wouldn't rush through it just because there may be some negative consequence for them, because we could have gotten it earlier, we didn't. So, and plus, you're not really the final approval anyway. It's going to be DESE ultimately.
But they're still operating.
Yeah, I don't know how that works. But, yeah.
And we did send them the list from the Department of Education. That was our list of questions that we asked for them to submit, and that was back on, it was prior to the July meeting, but then we requested it again on July 15th, and then followed up with a reminder as well.
More to come on that. You'll see that on the agenda next month. Next, the MAP Academy Charter School. I believe we all received an email a week or two ago, I think, stating that this charter school would like to be available to students of Silver Lake. They would like to expand their district. And there is a comment period for sending in comments as to whether or not this can actually occur. And forgive me, Jill, I forget, is it December something for a comment period?
It is February 28th.
Okay.
The department will bring this to the Board of Education by February 28th. In your shared folder, there's an actual deadline for comments. Let me see if I can scroll to that quickly now. It's a pretty, sorry.
Oh, no.
Not Academy. The font is very small on there. December 1st.
Oh, okay. So, this is one of our favorite topics as a school committee. Sure. Oh, yes, please.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm gonna step back. I worked at MAP Academy for a period of time, so I'm gonna remove myself from the table in the discussion so that you all can have this without there being any jeopardy of.
Thank you. So, of course, one of our favorite topics, every time we lose a student to a charter school, the money travels with the student. And we still offer all the services, all the classes, everything. You know, I'm preaching to the choir. We've seen an uptick over the years consistently with students going to charter schools. And it does hurt. It hurts to have a student leave thinking they're going to get some different level of education or what have you at a charter school. And then there's the financial burden that goes hand in hand with that. It's up to this committee if we want to make any sort of comment. We can also, as individual residents of these communities, also go out and comment if we like. I throw it out there. I don't know if the school committee wants to. I'm not opposed at all. You know, I'd be more than willing to make some sort of filing. Again, just stating the case of the public school, you know, continuing to lose students to more and more charter schools. That's my feelings of just one member. I don't know how anybody else feels.
Where are they located?
They're in Plymouth.
Oh, is it Plymouth? No?
I'm afraid I'm not going to be eloquent, and I'm afraid I might say things that I would regret, so I'm being very careful. $1 million every single year from Halifax, Plimpton, and Kingston goes to paying charter school tuitions from the Silver Lake budget. That's 4% of our budget. You know, we're scraping by right now trying to talk about how we can have more kids in the CTE program. You know, we provide education for all students regardless of their need if they live in our 3 towns. There's some extraordinary expenses that I am proud to pay to make sure children are getting the services they need to fulfill themselves socially, academically, and personally in our towns. The charter schools do not represent all students. They don't take all of our children and satisfy their academic and social emotional needs the way people think they do. And this would just be another thing we need to deal with every single budget cycle. If we let more seats open up at charter schools in our area, we'd be taking away from the kids who need the resources. We'd be taking away from opportunities that our students could have here at Silver Lake. I'm adamantly opposed to charter schools in Massachusetts.
Any other comments?
So, forgive me for not knowing, does Matt pull from us right now?
No, they can't. They're trying to expand their own district to include.
So Rising Tide does, okay, but not Matt.
I think reading this, it says enrollment preference, so I think it's one of those situations where if a Silver Lake student, they can apply to MAP, and if there's any seats not filled by Carver, Plymouth, or Wareham, then it would open up to any other town. But Silver Lake wouldn't get any preference over, say, I don't know, Norwell, which is not on their expanded list either. And I don't know if anybody knows if that's right, but that's the way I was reading it.
But right now, they can't take from Silver Lake.
Well, this doesn't say, this says an enrollment preference. I think a Silver Lake student could still go there, but they wouldn't be.
They have
preferred.
enrolled some Silver Lake students.
Oh, they have?
So the way you're reading it is correct.
Oh, I read it differently. I apologize.
And what is their particular hook? Like, what is it that, I mean, most charter schools have some kind of emphasis or something that they specialize in or something like that? Do they have any particular hook or just, we're here as a charter school?
I'm not aware of anything. It's just another option.
Can we ask Emily that?
Can I answer that?
Yeah, because it's...
Okay.
That's Russ.
It,
Russ.
I'm not
on
asking.
paper, their mission is to serve students who otherwise have not been successful in public education, allowing them to grant diplomas up to the age of 24, which is unusual within the state, and is an exception because on paper, the mission states that they are targeting students who have otherwise dropped out of or are not currently attending schools as their foundational mission. That's how I will phrase that.
So I have a slight follow-up question that has to do with funding, and again, I'm kind of addressing this to Emily and possibly you, Michaela. I believe DESE authorizes public education for students up to age of 21, and then, because we hear stories all the time about some students in more disabled settings aging out when they turn 21. So if this school's authorized to admit students and grant diplomas up to age 24, from ages 21 to 24, if they reside in our town, is that money coming out of our budget? I don't know if anybody knows that.
So, in the special ed world, it's when you hit 22. In the regular ed world, there actually isn't anything in the statute dealing with age. So most school systems use 22, but it isn't actually specifically in the law.
So for people above that age, there's no money coming out of our district?
There could be, potentially, because it's a gray area.
Yeah.
If it's in the regular ed side. I mean, that's something that maybe Christine will know, but it's not prohibited by the law to educate somebody that's over 22 in the regular ed side. There's no real clear guidance.
Thank you.
I have not had that experience.
So right now, they're pulling students from Silver Lake regardless, particularly if they do not fill seats from their accepted preferred towns. And we're being asked to make a statement that may permit them to expand to us as being part of their preferred towns. Am I getting that correct? So the poll could be stronger theoretically.
It's an open public comment period, correct?
Yes.
So we could write a letter that says anything. Yes, we
Sure.
want you to. No, we
Yeah.
don't. That's the question, right?
Yeah.
Do we want to send a letter, and if so, what do we want it to say? Right? I'm just asking, is that the request?
Yeah, do we
Okay.
have an appetite for sending a letter? And again, I didn't realize we're actually sending students. I thought this was the tipping point to
We
begin.
haven't sent, just want to clarify that. But some of our students have chosen to enroll at MAP Academy.
Right, so yes, we're not sending them, good heavens, no, but there's Silver Lake students there.
Another question, I'm trying to, I don't know if Dave Murphy is still here, but he's with our other private schools in district, we get asked to send student information. I don't know if currently MAP Academy, because we're not in their region, if they're able to get that list of students in the same way that other schools are.
So that's chapter 71, section 89G, second paragraph. So at the request of a school district from which a Commonwealth charter school enrolls students, the charter school shall provide third-party mail house addresses for all students currently enrolled and vice versa.
So my understanding is that if this is approved, we would then begin, if requested of us, we would then have to send names of our students to MAP Academy.
And then we'd get those little postcards in the mail saying come to our school instead of going to your district school.
Yes, and
And we're not allowed to do it the opposite.
We just don't, do we? I thought that we're not allowed. It doesn't sound like. Well, the argument is that they get our lists and then they start leafleting. but
we are allowed under
We
the
are allowed,
same,
right?
under the same section of the law to request from the charter schools through a
Charter
third party the addresses of their students from our town so we can send out information to them as well. Much, much less used provision.
So what's the feeling for the committee? Do we want to reach out and say anything?
Yeah, I make a motion, we reach out and say something.
You know I'm going to ask you to give some language on this one.
It'd be my pleasure.
I will second that motion.
To say something?
If Jason's willing to be the one to say it.
So I'll just reiterate my statement from earlier. We have on many occasions opposed the expansion of charter schools that currently exist by expanding the amount of seats available to them, and by we've also opposed the introduction of new charter schools as well in the Commonwealth. On several occasions we've made that stance, but I know this is a different body. I'd be more than happy to expand upon that in reference to this particular situation on behalf of the committee.
Perfect.
So is this the time that we should be debating this at greater length, or should we come back to it when we're trying to talk about language?
I'm not going to do editing by committee. I will not write it if it's like edited by
Oh,
committee.
no,
Okay.
I'm not going down the road of,
Please.
yeah, a letter is a letter. I'm not going to,
I will vet it with Paula and Jill to make sure I don't embarrass the committee or the district. That's the safeguard I'm willing to go through.
I think that Gordon's question, correct me if I'm wrong, was more about the issue, not necessarily the wording of the letter, correct?
What do you mean then by that? I don't understand.
Yeah, so I mean, what I'm after there is, you have to look at our constituencies that we all represent. And, you know, I confess to being personally torn as a representative of the, you know, as a member of the school committee. I want every single dollar I can possibly get in the schools. And I want every single kid that I could possibly have here. And, you know, if you force me to say today which way am I supporting, I'd probably support trying to limit access to the charter schools. However, as a parent, I certainly wrestled with different issues with different of my kids, and if I perceived that I had that there was a better fit, so to speak, and I wanted the right to send my kid to that better fit for what conceivably could be solving some complex problems or something to that effect. I want the access to that. And I think that's a fairly sophisticated question, which then also leaves me in the position of saying, okay, that makes, which I do not love, but it does make the issue of education market-based in the sense that we're actively competing against the charter schools, and what is it then that we would theoretically need to sharpen to inspire our constituents to not want to send kids to charter schools? That's a really, really big discussion. And I don't know if the appetite is to have that discussion now.
go ahead.
Did you have some first?
No, go ahead. I
don't know. So I wrestle with that as well, Gordon. In fact, my oldest, we did evaluate sending her to the charter schools because I thought Silver Lake may be too big for her. She ended up coming to Silver Lake and loved it and did great. Student body president, woo! No, she did great.
Creator of Laker Day.
Yeah, Creator of Laker Day. That's right. That being said, I felt that on a family level, I needed more choice for her to decide on her own. As a school committee member, I wrestle with the other side of your argument, and I think as I sit here as a school committee member, I have to behave in a way that benefits the whole school, and therefore, from a financial perspective, I'm in agreement to send a letter that says we are not supporting expanding your area to Kingston, or I mean Silver Lake, excuse me. But that doesn't exclude me from the challenge that I have as a parent, as a family member, and I'm not necessarily in favor of the way charter schools have been set up in the Commonwealth, especially from a financial perspective, but I respect the ability for families to have choice in a way that doesn't burden them financially.
Right.
So for me, I will vote to send the letter, but I'm with you on your split argument. But I have to do the school committee hat. That's just the way I separate my conflict.
And that's probably how I would lean if we're going to vote to send it, and then I will probably vote in favor of sending some sort of message, the implication being the message being that we want you to expand into our realm. But I think this is a really serious consideration for our constituencies as well. And there's a lot of, public level grumbling about things going on in school and the ability to, sort of exercise, choice and things like that. And I'm sensitive about that. So again, I don't know if this is the moment to debate on that.
Well, I wasn't trying to convince you one way or the other. I'm just telling, I sit in the same over the fence like you do on the issue.
Yeah, I hear you.
I agree with a lot of what's been said. I think anytime we can vocalize the burden that having students go to charter schools puts on our public school system, I like that opportunity. I would like to try and use that opportunity. Do we have a motion at this point?
And a seconder.
Okay. And the motion is to craft a letter and send it? Okay.
Can we just be clear to craft a letter and send it in opposition of Sober Lake being added? Just wanted the intent to be clear. I'm not wordsmithing. I'm just making sure the intent is in the motion.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Abstain? Thank you.
Okay. We're moving on to the next one is.
She's not related to that. Came up in that conversation.
Okay.
And tell me if I'm crossing any ethics things, or I don't think I am, because it's not related to actual Mount Academy, but when you were reading that, it became apparent that we could be sending information to students who are enrolled in other charter schools. Who within the district would be the person that might take on exploring that as an avenue that we could be sending information as well and providing this as another option back to them? It doesn't sound like anybody's ever done that, or that it's a very common practice, but.
So we've had some pretty robust conversations about charter schools at this level in the past, and their original intent in Massachusetts was to allow some innovative educational practices to be tried out, but they were supposed to be shared back with the public schools, right? And we've never seen that. So that's one of the things this committee's asked for. If you're going to exist, fulfill your mission. Share some of those innovative practices and the outcomes you've had. We've talked about reformulating how the tuition is paid. Because Gordon, I totally understand what you're saying. For your own child, if they're not being successful and they're struggling, you do want to have options, right? It's the financial impact it has on the broader community of the Silver Lake Regional School District. We've had these conversations. We've talked about marketing versus advertising and what we're allowed to do as a public school. Are we allowed to advertise? Are we allowed to market? It's a fuzzy line. And with the jobs that everyone has on their day-to-day school operations, and this many laws, and this is just the abridged version of the laws that govern Massachusetts public schools, I stumbled upon it, because that's what I do sometimes, I just read the book. We only found it last spring, that we are allowed by statute to reach out, right? So I don't think we've moved on it yet. I did mention it to everyone who's at the table when I found it. I would love to see us come up with some sort of marketing scheme where we could just say what we do well here and send it back out. And not to put you on the spot, Dave, I haven't even met you formally yet. I believe I threw you under the bus before you officially came on and said, maybe this is something an HR person can help us with, with the central office staff. But I'm sure Jill has given Dave a bunch of other jobs to do as well, and this was just an idea. So If only we had an expanded CTE program.
Gordon, that's the way my mind was going to. You know, if we
Yeah.
had a graphic arts program, we'd just have the kids do that.
But really, if this is something the committee feels serious about, we can pass that charge on to Jill through us, and then Jill can prioritize through her administrative staff if we need to put some time into this now, or if it's, I don't know what's important, right? In the list of things.
Yeah, I don't mean to be facetious, but, which I think is the right use of the word, but let me know, Farah, if that's correct. I want my 4% back. I want my $1 million back. We deserve our $1 million back, whether it's from them or from a redoing of this way that the charter schools are charged. We want our 4% back, and if doing that or getting a portion of that back requires marketing, have at it. I'm with you. Postcard, simple.
Can I make a suggestion that, because this is a great discussion, and you've all heard it, why don't we put this on the next agenda for the next meeting and come back and after we've had some time, think about it with ideas, what have you, maybe see what administration, even from a technology standpoint. Your mind does go to the CTE program, and we just recently added the healthcare aspect of it. That should be, perhaps something that's broadcasted, but this is a great discussion. I'm going to suggest let's roll it into next month. We'll think about it more, administration will think about it more, and, we've got teachers and paras sitting here with us tonight, and we're in discussions and negotiations. An additional $1 million in a budget would be wonderful to have, so, okay.
Thank you for letting us open it back up.
No, you're great discussion. Okay, moving on, I'm going to hand it over to Jill.
So the next item is municipal representation in collective bargaining. And we have had municipal representatives in the past. As a relatively new superintendent, we had a conversation with Attorney Duperret as to what that process should look like in terms of how we go about determining who will serve in negotiation sessions. And so Attorney Duperret forwarded an opinion on the matter with regards and some citations about Mass General Law. And we have in fact invited the towns to select potential representatives to our collective bargaining. And I believe Jonathan Seelig and Keith Hickey are here tonight. I have not heard back from Plymouth if they have selected Plimpton, a potential representative.
We know what you mean.
But Liz did tell me she was going to bring it to the Board of Selectmen for consideration. I don't know if anyone from Plimpton is here tonight. Okay. So I just wanted to mention that Attorney Duperret is here to answer your questions, but I believe our town administrator in Kingston, Keith Hickey, is interested, and I think Jonathan is here to find out more information.
Sure. I'm not signing anything.
And for the past few years that I have been, I know that Christine Joy has volunteered to serve as representative. Again, I don't know.
She's still our liaison to schooling, so it's probably going to be her as well.
Now, in the past, it's been one individual, correct me if I'm wrong, from the three towns. Like, I remember Kim Roy, for a period of time, was involved. Is it one individual? It is one individual, so, yeah.
From each town?
From each or all? One. From the three schools together.
One person.
One person.
So the three towns would have to choose one person.
Yeah. Again, I remember years ago, Kim Roy. I have straws with me tonight.
And if I may, just with all due respect to whomever you all choose, having served on this negotiations committee for the last, 4 years or so, it's really important to pick somebody who can actually participate in almost every session, because a negotiation builds upon itself, and so you can't be gone for 3 sessions and come back and know where you were and know why you agreed to something. So I would just respectfully request whoever signs up for this makes a commitment to attend, because that's been an issue in the past.
So, yeah, and so this is actually a 2-step process. So one step is the 3 towns figure out who they want to serve. The second step is the committee decides, is that person, so you have a legal right to be at committee meetings and executive session, whenever the committee convenes as a whole, like tonight, to talk about bargaining. But to actually serve on the negotiating team, that's a second step where the committee would have to determine, do you want the individual on the team or not, or are they just going to be part of the larger body just for executive sessions? So it's not automatic that they would actually be in a bargaining team, and part of that is, do they want to be? Sometimes the town representative doesn't want to go to every single session. They just want to be at the committee level so they can vote on the contract and vote on process as we go along.
So today, I only have one town that has responded with a person who is formally interested in serving. All of the towns were notified at the meeting tonight, so I don't know what the will of this committee is in terms of how they want to move forward. But we do have negotiation sessions coming up with some of our unions.
Right, and we don't meet again, regular session, until it's a bit out there. In October, one person, Christine, that said that they would.
Cte is interested.
Okay. So, and you haven't heard from Plimpton?
I've heard that Liz was going to bring it to the Board of Selectmen, but I have not had a response yet prior to the meeting. And our letter that went out to the towns did note that we would be meeting tonight to discuss this issue.
Okay. So I guess we could do this at any point in the negotiation process, correct?
It's supposed to be done in advance, actually.
Okay. Okay.
So if the process is that the 3 towns get together and decide who's going to represent, that's step 1, correct?
Yeah, at one of your meetings.
Yeah. Can we?
So in theory, that's tonight.
Okay. I was just going to suggest that to expedite the process, that because we have sessions coming up, that I'm not making a motion, but we have a motion that says whoever the 3 towns decide, we just need to decide whether we want that person to sit on the committee or be allowed into, just as they are by right, into just the general executive session, right? I mean, that's the policy decision tonight. Do we want the town representative on the bargaining unit, on the collective bargaining team, or not? Whoever they are. Isn't that the question? Whoever they are.
Well, there really should be 2, so the towns really should vote tonight to pick the person they want. That's up to them, but at your meeting. And then the second step would be you would vote as a committee about whether or not to have them on the team. So maybe what you could do, if you want to allow then some say after the fact, you could say, we'll accept Mr. Hickey subject to...
Sell it.
Sell it. Sell it. His name is Sell it.
If it does have they would like to serve, then we would have another meeting where the towns would actually vote at that meeting. Normally, there's only one person that wants to do it. If anybody, most places there isn't anybody from the town that shows up. And then the second question before you vote on, if you do pick Mr. Hickey, the question for him is going to be, do you want to be in the bargaining team or not?
You keep saying that. That's an example, right? Can I just...
Sure, absolutely.
I apologize for those who may not have had the opportunity to meet yet. My name is Keith Hickey. I'm the town administrator in Kingston. I raised this issue. I got a letter, I think, the first letter, Thursday or Friday, from the superintendent notifying me and Kingston of the opportunity. I got a second letter, I think, Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday, I
Kingston.
apologize. Saying the same thing with regards to some additional collective bargaining. I brought this to the Board of Selectmen Tuesday night at a meeting. It was the first time they had heard the conversation about this. The way the superintendent was kind enough to clarify how the position was filled. There was some concern or question whether it was the chair of the Board of Selectmen or the town chief executive officer. Through council, I think, we were able to determine that if a town's chief administrator was also like a town manager or a town administrator, it's their decision. They can sit or designate somebody, including a Board of Selectmen member. And so I went to the Board of Selectmen this past Tuesday and I looked for some direction. At the end of the day, I work for the 5 Board of Selectmen members, and do they want me spending portions of my time in collective bargaining with the school department? Didn't get an answer, frankly. So I understand you guys have a discussion tonight, executive session tonight, to discuss collective bargaining. I frankly am not comfortable, as I stand here tonight, to say to you, I absolutely can do this, because I haven't been given the direction from my Board of Selectmen. They'd like to have me invest my time in doing this. I mentioned to Jill when we talked yesterday or the day before, frankly, I don't want to get in the way. This is something new to me. I'm happy to help out Jill and the administrative staff. I don't know what I can do that Christine can't, but I'm happy to help in any way I can, but I also don't want to get in the way. So I'd like to have the opportunity to go back to my Board of Selectmen on the 20th, I think, 2 weeks from this past Tuesday, and just since they've had a couple of weeks to think about it, to determine whether or not they would like me or somebody, they'd like to have me designate somebody else to represent, to be considered to represent the town. So I apologize for not being as enthusiastic as your council is about having me jump in tonight. But I frankly just want to get I don't want to do something without my Board of Selectmen being aware of it, having an opinion that they can provide to me, so we're all on the same page. So I don't know what that does for you guys. I'm happy to sit in tonight if that's what you want me to do, but I don't want to commit, frankly, until I've had the opportunity to have the board weigh in officially on what their expectations of me are. Thank you.
And thank you for your comments and your honesty. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So I would suggest that we just wait until the next meeting, because that'll give us time to see what Plimpton wants to do as well.
Right.
You'll be able to go back to the board. I will say the most common thing is that if somebody from the town attends, it's only at the committee level. They're usually not on the bargaining team because it is huge time commitment. And so that would be common to kind of the middle ground is usually what happens.
Okay.
Can I say something?
Sure, absolutely.
So my name is Jonathan Seelig. I'm a selectman in Halifax, and I am currently the board of selectmen.
The selectmen.
The selectmen. Head selectman.
You've got 3 votes.
I emailed him that night and said, thank you for staying.
Yeah, exactly. So as much as I would personally like to help, we're in a state of flux a little bit in Halifax right now with one selectman and no town administrator. So I would not want to be on a committee where I wouldn't be able to give my 100%. And I wish I could promise you that I could, but given the circumstances in the day-to-day right now, I don't feel comfortable making that commitment as it stands.
Okay. Go ahead.
I think, Madam Chair, under the current ground rules that we have, we can invite members of the town elected officials and select board to observe our meetings.
Yeah, we need to have that conversation.
Okay.
Later. Yeah.
Okay, all right.
Go ahead.
I just want to thank both our representation from the Board of Selectmen in Halifax and our town administrator from Kingston for joining us tonight and speaking to this issue. We really appreciate it and your willingness to consider this option and to work together to try to find the best option for our 3 towns. So thank you.
Our pleasure.
Happy to help.
Thank you.
I'll wear a tie next time.
I won't. That's my made a decision.
Thank you both.
Thank you. All right. Moving on, principal's report.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our new school committee members. In your shared folder on the drive that Ms. Tringali put together for you are some school updates, including information about our back-to-school night, our senior bulletin, which I'm excited and thrilled to say we're sharing 5 months early this year to allow families time for planning. And then some information about a new program called I Decide that we are joining in partnership with Mass General Hospital, Harvard Medical School, the Department of Public Health, and the Institute for Health and Recovery. And this will essentially be a more robust version of our homegrown LEAP program to assist students who may have substance use related infractions at school. The program is providing us with financial support and resources and access to their robust programs to support our students who, for example, may be addicted to vaping. So we're excited for that partnership. There's an FAQ in the shared folder for you. We'll be sharing information about it with our families soon. There is a research component to it, so there is a optional survey that will be shared with students. Parents, of course, can opt out of that if they prefer. But in addition to helping us build a homegrown program, students and families, if they choose, will have access to working with them as part of their research study to see how they can help with young adults in their addictions. So we're excited to be a part of that program. I have 3 donation requests and possible vote for the committee this evening. The first is the permission to accept a 2005 Ford Eco-Wagon to be utilized as a teaching supply in our automotive program. Melinda Hawks from Pembroke, Massachusetts would like to donate this to our program. $100 for the music programs at both the high school and the middle school in memory of Frank Wallace, who is the former music director and coordinator here in Silver Lake from 1964 to 1982. Unfortunately, Mr. Wallace passed away on July 13th, 2022, and his family wanted to make a donation on his behalf to both of our schools' programs. And the third is to accept a DVD produced and purchased by the Jones River Village Historical Society in July of 2022, and the town historian, Janice Guidoboni, to our high school library.
Any questions or comments on those donations?
I would like to make a motion to accept donations and to send a thank you letter.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Thank you very much. We absolutely will draft those thank you letters. I have sort of an unconventional out-of-state field trip request in that it is one of 2 locations. It's for our music program, who unfortunately due to COVID has been unable to travel for the last couple of years. So Mr. Pasqua, our 7 through 12 music and art coordinator, is working with a travel agent to develop 2 proposals. Trip proposal number 1 would be to perform in Disney in Orlando, Florida. Trip proposal number 2 would be for New York City. They would both be around the same time frame, the end of March, beginning of April. It would require 2 days of missed school. The reason that we're asking this early in advance is to have your permission for planning purposes. But we would like to give our students and their families a little bit of voice and choice in selecting which trip based on their preference, but also the financial feasibility of it. We anticipate the New York City trip costing approximately $1,200. The Disney trip would be about $2,000 per student. And so we want to be able to give families, basically let them to vote on which trip they want, and then we can work on fundraising from there. And of course, any student with financial hardship who's not able to do any fundraising would not be declined the ability to attend on that trip.
Michaela, I'm sorry, can I ask, it's one or the other? It is one or the other?
Yeah, and I will give you the confirm which location, hopefully at our next meeting, but I don't want to miss the 6-month window to request that out-of-state trip.
Any questions on that?
Yeah, there's one question. Is there anything particular going on during that time frame in New York or Disney?
Yeah, so a lot of programs and organizations will run music programs year-round, and that's just a nice time of year for our students to be able to go in the school year. Disney often runs, they'll do different programs and different events throughout the year, and that's just a time that matches up with our school calendar. Yeah. So an opportunity to perform on a big stage in front of a big crowd at some musical event for both of them.
Any other questions? They both sound like wonderful field trips.
And I volunteered to chaperone. Jill will let me leave for a few days.
Thank you.
Accept. I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Great, thank you. Our students will be excited. And then lastly, for your light and leisurely reading, if you're having a hard time falling asleep at night, there's a 48-page document, which is our NEASC report. As if you recall, for those of you who are new, we had our decennial visit last October. Understandably so, our visiting team got a little backlogged with their day-to-day responsibilities back in their home districts, and so we actually didn't receive our final report until the end of last May. And so we did share the report with our families. You have a copy of it as well. And then over the summer, the Commission on Public Schools reviewed our accreditation report and voted to award us continued accreditation in the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. They recognize and were pleased to note that 5 of the 6 foundational elements in the standards for accreditation were met by our school, and they acknowledge that we are still developing a written curriculum in a consistent format for all courses in all departments across the school, and that's something that we continue to focus a lot of our department, faculty meeting, and professional development days in terms of creating those units and uploading them to EduPlanet. So we're making effective progress on that. We do need to submit a first report of progress by May 1st of 2023. I have no reservations in meeting that timeline. And I just do want to share some of the commendations in our report, just to give everybody a quick little summary, because I think it's a reflection of the hard work of our staff, but also the work of our district as a whole, in that they recognize our vision of a graduate and core values and beliefs about learning, our sense of school pride and belonging that are palpable throughout the building, our focus on curriculum development, the district's support of our curriculum work, fostering a culture focused on civic engagement and social and personal responsibility, the development and enhancement of organizational practices that meet the needs of each learner, and the examination of scheduling practices to allow for appropriate intervention strategies to support the academic, social, and emotional success of all students. And finally, the various opportunities that we provide for many students to experience active learning and to lead their own learning, often through student choice in assignments, activities, or assessments. So I think it's a huge testament to our amazing staff. So thank you for letting me share that. And that is all for me tonight.
Thank you. And now, the stage goes to our new principal. I'm not putting any pressure on you.
Okay, not a problem. Thank you for having me. And because I'm new, I do have an out-of-state field trip request, and it's not 6 months in advance.
I'm pretty forgiving, don't worry.
Okay. So the middle school chorus has been invited to sing at the Providence Bruins on October 28th. They've done this in the past, mostly in the spring, but our beloved music teacher, Sandy Brayton, is retiring in December. And so we want to make sure she gets to go and take the students. So we were just asking for you to approve that regularly scheduled trip just a little bit earlier on October 28th.
So moved.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye. Perfect.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just want to put it out there. I appreciate what Sandy Brayton did for both of my children, and I wish her all the best in retirement. She's really great.
She's gonna get to skate around the ice as like a lap.
That's a great
She would do
idea.
it.
As a Laker, get the Laker costume out? I'm on it.
My next request really has to do with how we also support the CTE program at the high school. We have a robotics club which will run no matter what, but because we haven't gone to any, I don't know what they're called, the competitions, so regional competitions during COVID, we did not impose a fee the past 2 years, but generally there has been a fee. The teachers are asking for $75 per student. Of course, we would take care of that. It was prohibitive for some students. And we would like students to participate once they get to that competition. There's like a kit of materials they have to build with, and that's really part of where the fee, goes to provide students with that opportunity. So I would just need you to approve that in order to get that off the ground in 2 weeks.
What's the proposed fee?
Oh, $75.
I'm sorry, did you say
No,
that?
it's my fault. I didn't say it.
It could be long. So I'll move to approve that fee for the robotics club at $75 per student.
Awesome.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Thank you so much. And I just want to personally thank Leslie Ann because we received her piano in our practice room this week. And I know that was already part of an agenda, but thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. It was fun watching you get out of the house.
It's a big one.
I have a small video of my husband and Coyle doing a last duet before I left the house.
Okay, Assistant, where are we? Hold on. Christine.
Thank you. I feel like it's been so long.
I know.
Financial, and you're ready, and you don't even have a paper copy in front of you.
We gotta talk about this one though.
That's okay.
If you hit Control Plus, you can make it bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
Okay. On your Chromebooks, you can view the financial for tonight's meeting. Just a couple things I wanted to mention. There's nothing extraordinary as of right now. And what we do is we encumber everything based on what happened as of last year. We know, or as of right now, based on contracts that we might have or information that we have. And as of right now, well, what I did want to mention is we have a couple of newer folks on the committee, and on the financial that you're looking at, the first page is a summarized version of our operating budget. And the pages that follow are the detail of all the individual accounts that support our budget. And what happens is it starts with the school committee function codes, and we go through the superintendent's office, and then we go through each of the items through each of the schools. The principal's office, teaching, guidance, then we get through maintenance. So it goes through all the different departments that we include. And our budget supports, it's the budget that we supported, that we voted on last spring. But then we also have the offset to that, which is the revenue side so the budget that we developed last spring, which includes the revenue side. And as you'll notice, the warrants that went through tonight are all organized by function and by type. So you'll see that there seem to be quite a pile of warrants, but we organize that by operating budget, revolving, grants. We do that so it's a little better organized. So we have similar types of information that are on each of the warrants. So if you're looking for something particular, you have a place to look to find out. All right, so for tonight, we do have a couple of deficits that have developed already. And one of the good things about that is it kind of helps me out as we're doing the budget, as we're going to be starting any moment soon. It will help me figure out, when I find out a problem in May or June, it doesn't always get into the budget until the following year, so we're kind of behind the cycle. So now for me, it's a better opportunity to include that as we're developing the budget this fall. Just a couple of items. One is under the principal's office. It's a dues account, and unfortunately, dues have gone up. And so this is a time for you to find out about that and take care of that for next year. One of the other items that's on there is the graduation account. And one of the good things is that we're already encumbering all those items that we know we're going to need for next June. So this is the budget account. This is the account for next June that we're budgeting for. We've already made the arrangements to everything that we have to rent. We already know that the police officers that we're going to need for that day. We already need what it's going to cost for the roads, the diplomas. So we're already looking into all of that. And during COVID, a lot of those items went up, the rental of all the equipment, but nothing's rolled back. As COVID's eased a little bit, nothing's rolled back. So we're trying to account for everything that we know of at this moment in time. The other deficit that we have is in one of our insurance accounts, which is the property and casualty. When I build the budget for the insurance accounts, all those non-employee insurance accounts I kind of build as a collective group, because a lot of the discounts that I can take for early payments and things like that, I have to build them together, and then when I get the invoice, it kind of separates them out, and that's one account where I do have a deficit this year. But I do have a surplus in 2 of the other accounts, so collectively there will still be a surplus, a small surplus there, but that one account does have a deficit. And then I just want you to keep in mind, this is at this moment in time. Things can change, but as of right now, this is what we know to be true with our financial. Are there any questions on what you've seen or heard so far? The one item that I also want to mention is related to the warrants that need to be signed electronically. I want to thank you for being so timely with those when they are sent out to you. And I did want to mention, even though we do have warrants tonight, we do try to keep it consistent with the second Thursday of the month, so we sign warrants. And when we're not in budget season, our meetings are a little off schedule, but we do try to keep our warrants on schedule, and that's for a lot of our commitments that payments and commitments that we have. We'd like to keep those on cycle, for instance, with our utilities and things like that. So that works out a little better, so that our vendors can rely on when we do make our payments to our vendors. So that's what we do keep those payments on a consistent cycle, instead of bringing them to the meetings when we're having the meetings. This meeting just happens to coincide when that's happening. So I did want to thank you for being timely when you were signing those electronically. And if you keep doing that, that'll be wonderful. Thank you very much. And that's it for right now. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Jason.
So last spring I mentioned that at a charting the course I went to, Glenn Kuchar reminded us of the responsibilities of school committees, and budget is one of the big items that we're responsible for. And it suggested that every month when we get the financial report, or every meeting we have, we should, as a committee, vote to approve that. So I make a motion to approve the financial report as presented by Christine.
Really? Okay.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Thank you. Moving on to Assistant Superintendent.
Thank you. Inside your packet, you shared the professional development plan for 22-23. I just wanted to take a moment to highlight some of the opening professional development that was done at the district level for our kickoff. We had our new teacher orientation for all new staff on August 24th, and thank you to our principals and mentor coordinators and induction coordinators for having a good, positive, energetic kickoff, including a bus tour and collaboration between mentors and new staff. And then on August 29th, we had our district welcome back, which was a presentation that involved obviously the superintendent and district leadership and other leadership positions, but also it started with our students, so thanks to them for their participation. I think it was a lively start. And on the second day, we had our mandatory trainings, and our curriculum coordinators worked with staff on curriculum expectations for the year. And then we also had a workshop for our paraprofessionals on the second day to try to provide our paraprofessionals with the same training and skill building and messaging that we provide to teachers. So Dr. Teresa Sullivan presented on post-pandemic classroom management for our paraprofessionals, so we really appreciate the paraprofessionals' involvement in that day to strengthen their skills and have consistent professional development with all of our staff. And then for the rest of the year, it kind of breaks out the schedule, and just to highlight a point made by Principal Gill, with curriculum as our focus, one of our professional development days is devoted toward providing staff with time to collaborate together and make progress on having a standards-aligned PK through 12 curriculum. And also, we had professional development this past week focusing on inclusive practices, and not just for students who may, be identified as potentially facing challenges, but really inclusive practices to make sure all students have their needs met. So that's a little bit about the opening of school and our professional development plan for the year. I just wanted to share that, what our focus will be.
Any questions? Okay, thank you. Alrighty, Ms. Superintendent.
So I have a few items for tonight. The first is the extension of universal free school meals in Massachusetts. With the signing of the FY23 state budget, Massachusetts will provide state support to extend universal free meals this year. The new state funds will be supplemented with the federal USDA reimbursements and allowing us to provide free meals to all students at no charge, to be reimbursed at the federal free rate during the 22-23 school year. In terms of COVID, the Department of Education and the Department of Public Health issued a joint memo that was distributed to families on August 16th with COVID information for the upcoming school year that is aligned with the CDC guidance. The Commonwealth is not recommending universal mask requirements, surveillance of testing of asymptomatic individuals, contact tracing, or test to stay testing in schools. Districts and schools are reminded that there is no longer any statewide masking mandate in schools other than school health offices, and there is no testing requirements for schools. As always, individuals who wish to continue to mask, including those who face higher risk, will be supported in that decision in our schools. In terms of our opening day focus and some of the work that went on over the summer, our opening day focused on our district-wide goals that are aligned with the strategy for district improvement. The goals were created after our summer institute, which included a review of what was completed in 2022. You may recall we gave an overview, I think, in April of last year of what we had achieved with regards to our strategy for district improvement and what areas the leadership team felt needed to be prioritized for the upcoming school year, still aligned with that strategy. The day began, as Ryan explained, with the student panel. They outlined their hopes for the upcoming year and words of support and reflection on effective strategies. I want to give a special thank you to the following middle school students: Layla Maloney and Brandon Nista. And at the high school, Sarah Thomas and Dylan Sassoni. The student panel did a wonderful job, and I think everyone agreed they provided us with the inspiration that we needed and had such wonderful insights and words of kindness and love for our staff. So thank you to our staff as well. Schools are working on aligning their goals as part of our education evaluation process. Attached in your shared folder, you'll see my proposed goals for school year 23. You'll notice that the first one is a student learning goal that schools will have at least 70% of students achieve meeting or exceeding expectations in each MCAS subject by the fall of 2024. And this was decided upon after the leadership team viewed our 2021 MCAS data, which was available at that time for each subject in each school. The reason why we selected this target is that the average for ELA was 59%. The average for math in our schools was 45%, and the average in our schools for science was 52.75. We're looking at a 10 to 23% increase if we meet this goal, depending upon the grade and subject matter. And while I am not okay with 30% of students not meeting grade level expectations, we felt that this goal was appropriate. Should the data reveal that we have made improvement this past year, we may revisit this goal and set a higher goal. But we spent a lot of time debating and discussing this issue. And one part of that debate was the idea of whether or not we should focus on all three tested subjects. And the reality is, and what we came to the conclusion is that students must earn a competency determination for all three subjects in order to graduate. They do not have the luxury of focusing on passing just one of these tests, and for this reason, we hold ourselves accountable for all three subject areas and felt that with our focus on curriculum development, that was also cited in our NEAS report, and in Assistant Superintendent Lynch's reports on curriculum development that has taken place not only through professional development days, but over the summer. And our focus on effective practices, all disciplines would be able to contribute and play a role in helping us to reach this goal. We also debated, it's not lost on us, that that the measure itself, while it's not the only measure of a student's success, it is a valid and required state criteria, so it is one measure by which we can kind of chart whether or not our interventions are working and our efforts are going in helping students to close those achievement gaps. So that's why it was selected. In order to meet this goal, if you look, I've kind of bulleted some items in the memo to the school committee, but in general, we're focusing on promoting inclusion for our special education students, increasing access to grade level standards. We will continue our data collection and interventions. We will focus on effective strategies that promote student engagement through feedback and through multiple means of curricular presentation, voice and choice, and the ways that we present information to our students. So those are the areas that we will continue to work on throughout this year to try to help close those gaps.
Any questions? Thoughts? That's it? Okay. Thank you. Next is the regional agreement. We talked about this maybe almost a year ago now. The regional agreement between the three towns is a living document, gets updated periodically, amended periodically. Russ has scrubbed through it for some language changes and amendments. And of course, the last census, 2020 census, anyone who was on the committee back then, indicated no changes in the voting of the members from the three towns. So I'm going to confess we had gone back and forth a little bit this afternoon, and then I actually work as well, besides sit on the school committee. So I did not get the end of the correspondence. If we need to vote, if we need to bring it to the three towns, where we fell out on that.
So, yes, we would have to do warrant articles. If you voted to change the agreement at the school committee level, then we send out warrant articles to the towns, and then they vote on it at town meeting, and then it would also have to be approved by the commissioner. So normally what I would do is take any changes you want to make. We would send it to Christine Lynch over at DESE. She would look at it, preview it, and if she's okay with it, then obviously the commissioner would approve it after the fact. You don't want to go to the towns with revisions and then have the commissioner say no after it's already voted. Now, in this case, you're just changing a date, and I noticed a couple other small things just quickly looking through it, but I also had emailed Paula and said I could do like a thorough review of the whole agreement. I think we were just looking at changing the census language, but I think DESE, if I send this to DESE with just a 2020 change for the census, my guess is they're going to look at your whole agreement and suggest a whole bunch of other changes.
Yeah.
So really, I guess the two options are you could just vote the update to the census language, which is really just changing the date because it didn't change the percentages from each community. And then we'd send it off to Christine and see if she does give us back some other feedback. Or I could look through it first, give you a whole bunch of different changes. I mean, I don't think there's going to be a ton, but I came up with quite a few just looking at it quickly. And then you can vote on it maybe at the next meeting, and then I get it to Christine. But I have a feeling she's probably going to say there's some other things that need to change in this agreement.
I don't know the last time anyone took a good look at it. I don't recall.
It's probably when Pembroke left.
It probably was.
So it was reviewed last time.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's what it was
But even
updated.
like for language, like scrubbing through it.
Yeah.
Myself as one committee member would be interested in seeing a scrub of the document before it went anyplace else, and then a review by the committee, and then again, it's a living, breathing document. I think it should be looked at periodically.
Yeah, maybe the most efficient thing to do is I look at it, I can send it to Jill and Paula, get it to Christine, for her initial look, and then come back to the committee with all of that together. Then we could list the things that came from me and the things that came from Christine. Christine's will be mainly legal or medical typically.
Okay. Is everyone, I don't know that we need a vote for that, so we'll be voting it after it's reviewed. Do you disagree?
I want to make a motion to start the review process of the regional agreement.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll say.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor? Thanks, Russ. Okay, the next item on the agenda under new business, this is one that I put under new business for this evening. And I'd like to introduce the concept to you folks by reading some thoughts that I put down. We have the privilege to have great schools here at Silver Lake, led by a strong leadership team. We were recently ranked in the top third of schools in the state of Massachusetts in the Boston Magazine. I don't know if anybody saw that. We are proud of our schools. Every school system has some level of bullying that occurs. This was true when I was in school several years ago. And that's supposed to make you laugh. And sadly, it is still true today. However, since our return from COVID, we have experienced more incidences, some of which have been fairly serious and impactful, particularly given the culture of posting on social media. I trust and respect our administration team and our staff and know they have put a great deal of thought and effort into preventing and responding to incidences of bullying. But I believe the time has come for the school committee to take a deeper role in dealing with this issue. Every student should enter the school building, our athletic fields, ride our buses, and participate in clubs, free of the fear of being bullied. I believe approaching this issue more actively, candidly, as much as you can, because there's a lot of privacy around this topic, with the focus on prevention and perhaps developing additional avenues for protecting or helping of any student who might find themselves in a bullying situation, we might be able to reduce the number of incidences. I am not suggesting the school committee override our leadership team, but instead join forces and support them in a more active way. Bullying is one of the topics that probably get all of us as parents and individuals fired up. I could not imagine being a student and getting on the school bus and dreading getting off and coming into this building, or getting out of my parents' car at the front door and dreading coming into this building. Every child that steps in this building has the right to have a day free of bullying, a day they can experience in a wonderful way, get a good education, and feel good about themselves walking out the door. We've seen more incidences since COVID. You know, whatever we can do to assist in helping reduce the number of incidences, whether it's, you know, I'm spitballing, I'm thinking out of the box, and I thought about this so much over the long weekend it wasn't even funny. You know, do we have students that are comfortable playing a role as a student you can go to if somebody is bullying you? Every teacher, every classroom should be open to a student coming in and saying, I'm having a problem. Do we make sure that the students are absolutely fully aware that if somebody is bullying me and I'm walking by John's class, even if John's holding class, I can go in that door? I don't know what the answer is, but I think the school committee at this point needs to take a more, and I'm saying active, because there are so many things that, you know, privacy and what have you, when we're not in the buildings. I think we need more of an oversight role, and we need to have this dialogue. We need to have this dialogue now and going forward to try and eliminate, at the very least reduce, the types of bullying and the incidences that we're having. I'd be interested in any thoughts, but that's why this topic is on there. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I always look to the left and you're right next to me. You can tap. You can tap.
I would just want to maybe offer that we are certainly happy to highlight some of the steps that we have taken over the past couple of years to try to, again, promote inclusivity and support for all students in our schools, including the Panorama Survey that we described last year that students had the opportunity to participate in, the entry findings where we surveyed our own students to find out what they felt were needs within our schools, and some of their comments with regards to feeling welcomed and expected. The creation of our core values, which one of our school committee members is wearing today, which was created before we even created our strategy for district improvement through the input, and were presented to you with our entry findings when we first joined you in these roles in 2020. We have also updated our second step, our anti-bullying curriculum, and we're working to implement that new program at the middle school level. It has been a few years that second step was selected as the new anti-bullying curriculum in all classrooms in our elementary schools. And so we're working towards a common language with our students. Last year, we provided anti-bias training for our teachers, for students, and for members of our school committee who also volunteered to participate in that as well. And we are working with our high school to consider new student-led opportunities. And I know that Principal Gill is working with her students and her staff to think about what that might look like at the high school level.
And just if I could add, there were 33 students that came on August 19th, 33 eighth graders. We call them Amity ambassadors, who just led the opening expectations for all students, did a skit on some bullying, but social media awareness, and how to use technology. So they led the charge on the stage. They did it today, and even kids came up to me on the bus and told me it was the best assembly they've been to. So I think that some of those students are getting feedback, and especially the student council students. Other kids are going to them, and then it's getting back to me already, and I've only been here for a certain amount of time. So I think that's really powerful, and having the students lead the work is a great avenue, because other kids are listening to kids.
Okay.
How would the school committee be more involved?
The privacy issues kind of are a little bit of a challenge, but the policies and the practices, I would like to know what sort of volume of incidences we're seeing. Things of that nature. We have a very divided community on some of the cultural things that we're doing here at the school. And some of it may be feeding into and swinging the pendulum the wrong way inadvertently. We've done a lot with anti-bias training, and I won't say a lot, we've done some with anti-bias training, etc. But I'd also like to see more of a Laker we're here for the education sort of focus come back.
If I may, Paula, first, I appreciate that you're having this conversation this evening. I think it's an important first step, and at a minimum, when we cross that threshold, we have to set aside our personal and our political beliefs. But we all have to have a shared fundamental belief that every child deserves to be in our schools. And forgive me, if you cannot support that on the school committee, I'm not sure this is the appropriate place for you.
Oh, no. And I don't think that's certainly what I was saying.
No, I'm not saying that's what you're saying. What I mean is as a school committee.
No,
that's, I think, uniting with our school leadership, right? I applaud what you're doing, Paula, right? I think we have to share and make it known that that is our shared fundamental belief.
Mm-hmm. There are so many different reasons, and I'm not going to say reasons, there are so many different types of bullying. You're short, you're blonde, you have an accent. I mean, there's everything. You're just the person in front of me and I feel like being a bully. The prevention is really where I'm focused. And as you have been too, and I'm not saying people haven't been doing a good job, they've been doing a wonderful job. But again, I think any child coming in this building should be free of bullying. Mm-hmm. So, again, spitballing, does every child coming into this building know that if I'm physically being bullied right now, it's happening to me right now, and I'm in a hallway, what do I do? If there's students around me, do I tap Emily and say, will you help me? Will she help me? Or God forbid, she's going to pull out a phone and videotape it. Again, can I knock on John's door and say, I need help? What is the immediate ability for a child to get assistance when they are experiencing bullying in our hallways or our classrooms? Are there more things, are there other ideas? Are there things we could be doing to help them? This isn't a conversation that is going to be solved tonight, but I think the school committee needs to have some sort of, and again, it's a delicate topic because of privacy and what have you, but I think we need to have more insight into the temperature and what's happening in the buildings and what's going on to prevent anything that has happened or may happen. Go ahead.
So, going back to Jason's comment earlier about the role of school committees and reminding us what our function is here. One of the main ones, as you know, is to set policy. And in order to set policy, we have to have data and experiences and information to do that, correct? So I see that what our role as school committees is to support those policies and those handbooks and the financial resources to support what is identified by professionals as to the things that we should employ in our school system. I agree with you that we need metrics, and it would be great to get some reports on metrics because it can only inform the policies that we then create. But I will say that I agree with Michaela that every student should walk in the door and feel the way that you described that they feel, and they should be entitled to that. Everybody comes to that door with their own lived experiences and their own experiences at home. And, we are, as much as we'd all like to think we're not, a product of our upbringing, good and bad. And so, in some respects, this isn't just an issue for us to deal with at school. It's an issue for us to culturally think about how we help support families at home. And so, policies that we can do, financial resources that we can make available, handbooks and guidance that we can do as a school committee, I think that's right within our wheelhouse. getting actively involved in situations, I think, is something that we need to make sure we steer clear of in our role as school committee members. And I don't know that delicate line, but I guess those are my initial thoughts on your topic. I fully agree with you, all of you, on this topic. I mean, as a parent, as a person, I mean, but I just wonder, Paula, what we can do within the wheelhouse of school committee members to support the needs of the community. I do feel that there is, and I can only speak for Kingston because that's the only town I've lived in this district, but I do feel that there's a disconnect in our town about the services that are available to families to support family needs. We do a great job with, athletics and drama, and we have a great recreation program and whatever, but it's not clear that we have really direct access to other resources that might raise children or help support families, and having those lived experiences be more positive, such that when they come into a school, they don't have that tendency to need to behave the way that we're experiencing. So I'd like to see it, if we're going to do anything about it, it has to be in partnership with the towns and the families. It's just not something that we can just put on our school community to contend with. So I'm just looking at the macro perspective, and those are my initial thoughts. But I'm in, although I'm leaving, but I'm in.
You're in for the next 2 hours.
I think quantitative data to understand the same way that we understand that 50-something% of students, haven't passed or met expectations on MCAS, that there has to be some raw data to help us understand the scope and scale of where instances are occurring, and that, are there patterns in time of day, space in the building, things like that. And I imagine that administrators are looking at that data. But I do think that there's, without names being attached to, the same way we can look at MCAS data without names being attached to who has passed or failed, we can look at trends across and support policies that enable that. But I also think we are looking at a generation of young people growing up in a world very different than the one that any of us grew up in. And I fear that the problem is only going to continue to grow and become exacerbated. I know we hired a behaviorist last year, and a huge reason in doing so was to support the mental health and well-being of our students. But I think we really need to evaluate how, as a district, we can create policies and be open to alternative ways of thinking. We talked earlier about charter schools and the appeal for going to another place, and so often that appeal is to find a place where somebody belongs, and not that I don't think that this should be that place, but what kind of school within a school, alternate programs, different options, different scheduling, like what kind of creative outside the box thinking can we do? And can we then support the policy of, I don't expect us to be doing all of that thinking. I think it should be coming from the teachers and the staff and the administrators that are interacting and seeing it. But from one member of the school committee, I would support us reimagining a lot of different aspects of public education. And I think part of that can be in how we support mental health and well-being. I think bullying is a symptom of a larger issue. We talked about the drug addiction program, which I think is fantastic, that's coming in. Are we doing anything about phone addiction? Kids have a literal addiction to their phone. It is a literal, medically diagnosable addiction, and it's hard to address, right? Because they sort of need their phone, but at the same time, I went on play dates with no phone and went out in public with no phone until I was 17, or 18, when cell phones became more common. And so there was a time when we didn't need those. And so sort of stepping back to some of those more cultural pieces, like what else can we be doing and supporting as a school committee? And again, I don't expect that there's answers today, but I would just plant the seed, I guess, in the staff and faculty and administrators' mind, that I think you would find a lot of support if there's ideas you have, even if they seem wild and crazy and very extreme, that I think we're coming to a point as a society where we need to start doing that. We can't just say, let's keep using this model we've been using for 100 years and put these students into it and expect that it's going to stay and work and still function the same way. And I think the mental health of young people is at a very critical point in our society. I support any outside the box thinking that anybody in this room and beyond this room in our community has, and the policies that we can enable for that to happen.
You used two words in your statement repeatedly, and it was culture and community. And I think the situation, the ask that we're looking for here potentially goes well beyond the four walls of the middle school and the high school. You know, we wonder why we're seeing some of these increases, and it can definitely be due to mental health and the advent of electronic media. But we also see it in the discourse amongst adults in our own communities. The children learn from their homes first. We are their first teachers. And I really think it's incumbent upon the adults of our three communities to check themselves, check the rhetoric, and remember that the children are listening and reflecting some of those behaviors. The school, in 7.5 hours a day, 180 days a year, cannot solve all of society's issues. Society at some point has to step up and take some ownership with us and work to help us raise these children into the happy, well-adjusted citizens we hope they can all be someday. So, as a representative of my town, I think part of my responsibility is to reflect those values and those expectations when I'm presenting in public. And I think we can only ask the same of our fellow townspeople.
Justin, when you were just speaking, it made me think, is there a place where we could be offering more opportunities for adult education on some of these topics? Like, I mean, as a parent myself, like sometimes I'm like, I do not know what I'm doing. I'm having conversations with my 5 and 8-year-old thinking like, you're gonna be needing to unpack this with some other adult at some point in your life because I'm not sure I'm handling this correctly. Because again, the world feels very different now than it was when I was growing up. I think the divide between me and my parents was much less than it is between me and my children, even though we're the same age difference apart, you know, and so and I feel like maybe this has come up in a conversation in a school committee in the past of like what opportunities after school, during school, synchronously, asynchronously are we offering parents to continue their own education around some of these issues, and is that a place where we could be providing more support in partnership maybe with our communities, with our towns, with our libraries, with other public entities, our health departments in our towns or something, but maybe that's an area where we could try to offer some additional support or policy.
I would like to say that, I would like to ask first, how do we treat the aggressors that bullied victims in the past? What are the consequences? And what are we doing? For me, bullying, it's like a crime. Should be penalized or should be punished. That's the worst almost thing that can happen at school. And by reading the emails from Police and an email that there was some kind of situation, I would like to also ask how do we treat or what kind of consequences has a passive bullying has. So one person is bullying, but in the email it was mentioned that another person was recording this on the phone. Is the person who is recording this has any consequences? Or we should teach the kids that if they don't report bullying, it's almost the same like bullying. So I would like to ask, what in the past we had some situations, right, regarding bullying. What consequences can we get from the students? How does it work?
Sure. Generally speaking, once we receive a claim of bullying, the building administration would investigate and then would determine whether or not they could substantiate bullying. Sometimes they don't substantiate bullying, but they determine something unkind has happened. So sometimes we tend to use the word bullying or harassment very loosely as opposed to what our actual policy or state regulations define harassment or bullying as. So sometimes children do unkind things, but it doesn't meet the definition of bullying. So they set about to determine what happened, who may have witnessed it, who may have been present, and they try to determine whether or not they can substantiate the claim. Whether or not they can substantiate the claim, they can put together a safety plan for the student who has been targeted and try to put some things in place to try to help make the student feel safer and have a plan in terms of who to go to and how to report as quickly as possible, or other things. If there's a disagreement between students, it could be, not having lockers next to one another to avoid that kind of potential future interaction. And it can grow into something more serious where we are able to substantiate that something was done, and it can lead to suspension, and depending upon the seriousness, it could even lead to expulsion.
What was the last consequences did we take to that aggressor?
We can't speak to particular cases. We can give you general information, but we can't share private information, private disciplinary information about another student, because then we would be violating that student's privacy rights.
It's very difficult for a school committee to interact on this topic, and yet after serious issues and an uptick after COVID, when you hit a certain threshold of incidences, it really is a responsibility of the school committee to have some oversight or participation again in this. But it's a difficult topic. It's very challenging because of the... Russ.
So, I spent one term on a school committee, which I don't plan on doing again. But one thing we used to do on a topic like this is we would have the student leaders, so like the class president, vice president, we would have that group. They would come to us anyway, almost every meeting with, we'd like to see this change, or this is going on in schools, these are things you can improve. So sometimes we would reverse that discussion and say to them, hey, this is something we're concerned about. Can you go back to the student body and come to us with things that might be things we could consider on bullying issues or those type of things? And I'm sure probably administration's done some surveys and other things already. But that's one way to get information, because like Emily said, I would get off the bus and things would be over. Whatever was happening in school is done. Now kids get off the bus and they get text messages and Instagram and everything else all night long. My 3 daughters could attest to that. So that was one way we found that we could get information from the kids, because all of us didn't experience what they're experiencing now, or most at least I didn't. Probably older than some of you. But that's one way to do it. Or you can create a task force where you have committee members, students, administration, and they all meet and discuss a topic like this and come up with recommendations to the school committee. Because obviously it needs to be funded, whatever you're coming up with, and that's really where your role comes in. One thing, just to add something to what you were asking, if it's really serious, it also gets reported to the police, and they can take action as well, depending on the circumstances for bullying.
So speaking with them, what the scope of our authority is, I think kind of what's been suggested about trying to have some insight into data. We can't get too many particulars, but I'm sure we could get, I would have to imagine we could get a number of incidents and maybe some kind of categorization of those incidents, whether they were racially motivated or sexual orientation or other things like that. And if there were any way to get data that kind of was pre-pandemic, through the pandemic, post-pandemic, things like that, get some kind of understanding too of to what degree was it digital or electronic. That gets very, very complicated, whose actual stewardship it is, because it's technically not happening within the confines of school. I'd be supportive of something like that. Also, sort of a personal appeal in relation to how we conduct ourselves as school committee members. The rhetoric around schools is awful right now, and it is unacceptable. You know, I see things on social media calling our fine principals groomers and things like that, which is outrageous. Absolutely, completely unacceptable. And then I see people who, you know, want to go to absolute battle in response to it. And at least amongst the network of people that I associate with fairly closely and that sort of thing, I have said in a lot of cases, have restrained a lot of people in a lot of cases from, you know, retaliating over social media and all, you know, all kinds of other things like that. And there's something about how we model our behavior and our personal influences and the networks that we personally have, and ensuring that we are supportive of our administration and our teachers, and you know, generally speaking, of the direction we're going in the curriculum and things like that. Now, that is not to say that I have not had disagreements about ways that teachers have done things or ways that administrators have done things and things like that. The people who know that I have had a problem with that know that I have had a problem with that because I've gone in and talked to them about it. And sometimes we've had very pointed meetings and things like that, but I did not broadcast that stuff all over social media. And I have not smeared people. I have not smeared our administration or our teachers or things like that. And I just, you know, how we conduct ourselves is important, how we model ourselves.
Agreed.
I agree. I think that actually over the last, I don't know, 5 years since I've been here, that I think that the decorum has actually improved. There were times on this committee, and probably you too, Paula, where it wasn't always as pleasant as it could have been to each other, and I think we've done a great job of disagreeing respectfully or having discourse that was positive, which is great. My years on the school council at the middle school were very instructive. I thought in relation to bullying, we were able as parent representatives on there to participate in things that were effective for bullying, for instance, and they were data driven. I remember a case where the principal brought us some data on, just general data on infractions and when the infractions were occurring, and they were occurring during the last 18 minutes of school when kids were dismissed and the buses took off. I mean, it was just so blatantly obvious, and so we came to the school council and said, I'm thinking we should eliminate that 18-minute period as much as we can. 80% of the infractions were happening during an 18-minute period, which is, as school teachers and administrators, probably not that surprising to you. And, you know, I think we got that down to 5 minutes or something like that. And, you know, the vast majority of the infractions went away. Whether they got moved to another location or not, we don't know. But I mean, I think there are very real things that we can do based on generalized data like that. And, you know, Jim Dufield came up with an idea of like, this is what I would do with those 18 minutes instead. And we were like, this is, you know, data driven. This is really great. Let's see if it worked. And, you know, it had, I think, seeing the data post, it had pretty good impact. I think those are the types of things that either are on a school council or on a school committee that you can take generalized data and come up with suggestions for the administration of the teachers or the professionals and do something with it from a policy perspective. That was more easily implementable because it was just like, you know, he had the ability to do that within his scheduling system. But I think that for us, anything the administration or the teachers would like to bring forward, or even the students, that is actionable by a school committee, I think that we should consider it, whether it's in some formalized way through workshops or a task force or whatever, or just have some other means or methods to do that.
You know, bullying doesn't end when you graduate high school. You find them in the workplace. You find them on boards. You find them everywhere in life. But you can quit a board, you can change jobs, you can do a number of things. We have an absolute captive audience in these buildings. Legally, they have to be in these buildings. And whatever we can do, it might be baby steps, whatever we can do to have a pulse on what's happening in the schools and have some data and have some dialogue. I would like to see us do that. So I'm going to suggest that this topic go under old business on the agenda for the next time we get together, and we carry it forward. And I don't think we're going to solve everything in the next meeting or the meeting after that, but I would like to see us have some oversight and perhaps take some steps to try and help the situation. Again, I am not saying in the least that I brought this topic up thinking anybody with any authority, any leadership role, the teachers, everybody is not doing what they can. I just want to have dialogue, come up with ideas that perhaps we didn't think of before, and be a part of the solution.
Can I maybe suggest that for that next meeting, that there's maybe, and I don't know, this might already be in some one location, I just don't know it, I should know it. Like, is there like a catalog of the activities or the programs or the ages at which children are delivered these types of programs? Like, is there a bullying curriculum catalog of things that we do already that would be instructive, I think, for school committee members to see that? I mean, Jill, you just gave us a little rundown, but it would be nice to get some, like, a bullying action plan. I don't know what's in it now. I just don't know if it's all on one page.
So we have a anti-bullying policy.
Right.
As part of that, and we have recently adopted Second Step. So we have a program, and we can provide a link to those resources and topics. But in terms of actual individualized lesson plans, it's more of a plan that a program that would be implemented this year for the first time. In the past, and I assume it continues to be, it's also a topic that's talked about in our health wellness classes at the secondary level. So that's something we can provide, to the committee, a link to that information. I'm trying to think.
I think
what
that
else.
would also start earlier. Like, we inherit what happens in K through 6, and I would tell you that there's a heck of a lot of bullying that happens in K through 6. So I'm just kind of wondering if you can, I just think it'd be helpful to the community if we had a catalog of things that are happening that are addressing bullying.
Again, it's the same program, K through 8. It's all Second Step, so we can provide you with that.
Well, thank you all for participating in that discussion. And we'll pick it up again next time. Okay. Reports of standing committees. SLEA.
Good evening, everyone. Let me just say first, I appreciate so much of the discussion that's happened tonight, especially the discussion about bullying. I personally consider helping our students to become decent adults who treat each other with respect is really one of my and all of our biggest responsibilities, and we take that seriously. I know our administration does as well, and I agree that there's a lot of things that are being put in place now to try to address those concerns, and we're certainly on board with trying to do everything we can to put an end to these bullying situations too. I also appreciate the vote that the committee took on the charter schools. I agree that we need to make sure that Silver Lake is the best place for our kids to learn, and we need to make sure that we've got the resources for all of our kids. So I agree with that. I understand the ideas about school choice and stuff, and I know that can be an issue for some kids, but I think that like Jason so eloquently said, we have to serve all the kids, and a charter school gets to, pick. And so we need to have the resources to do that, and I appreciate what the committee did tonight to try to ensure that happens. This year, finally, since the first time since 2019, we got to start fairly normal, so we all enjoyed that, and the kids are excited to be back, and we're excited to not be dealing with being the mask police and social distancing and all that stuff. The district's also turning more towards a normal approach with their new goals as well, like the goal that Joe was talking about with 70% of the kids passing MCAS. So a big part of that, as I'm sure you can appreciate, is making sure that our special education students are getting to the level that they need to be to do well on MCAS. And the most important people for that, as I'm sure you can appreciate, is our special education teachers and our paraprofessionals. As you know, right now we still do have the paraprofessional contract unsettled. I just want to share a few pieces of information that you might not be aware of. We actually had, I'm sorry to say, huge turnover with the paras this year. We lost 8 of our paraprofessionals at the secondary level, and my understanding is that we lost about half of the integrated preschool paraprofessionals. By my calculations, we have over a 25% turnaround since last year in our paraprofessionals. And you know, I know that we've been talking a lot about this in the past year, trying to resolve the paraprofessional contract. And I shared some numbers with the committee on a spreadsheet. And you know, when you look at what's being offered by other schools, we're really just not competitive right now. The spreadsheet I shared showed that if you look at the total compensation package, it's 8% below the median of the local area. And that's not even accounting for the fact that so many districts, Carver, I mentioned the last time, is increasing their salaries by $2.50 an hour each year over the next 3 years. So we're not even looking at the future where everyone's getting these big increases. Our paras are starting step 1 at $16.57, and right next door in Bridgewater, Raynham, they're starting higher, and they're topping off at $27.42 an hour. Our maximum step for paras is $20.27. They get 30 paid days off. We get 21 for our paras. So, you know, when our paraprofessionals see that they can move over to the next district and get an increase of 35% higher salaries with 42% more paid time off, it's going to be hard to keep them here. And so I think we really need to do what we can to make sure that the compensation package being offered to our paras is competitive. And I think if we don't do that, we're going to continue to lose our experienced paras, and then our kids are going to suffer for that. You know, I know budgets are tight, but you know, I have heard at these meetings about the money coming from the state. Right now, I know that that's not unlimited, and I know that we're in kind of an odd time. But the district was able to find money this year for a lot of new administrators, and I'm not questioning that or second guessing it. In fact, personally, I have a supervisor who's a music specialist for the first time ever in about 15 years working at Silver Lake. So I know that having these administrators is going to make a difference, but I just feel that if we can find the money for people who are at the top of the salary, we should be able to find the money for the people at the bottom of the salary too. So I hope that we can settle this on September 26th. I know it will make a big difference for our paras, and I know it will make a big difference for our students as well. Thanks.
Thanks, John. And thank you for that spreadsheet. We are vetting it, so I'm not going to comment on it right now. I took some of my own interpretations from it, so I'm not going to speak out of turn right now. Is it the 26th or the 27th? Is it the 26th?
I thought it was the 26th. That's what I wrote down.
Yeah, check.
Is it
Oh, maybe I wrote down.
Is it?
26th at 5:30.
Oh, it's the 26th.
Yeah, Monday the 26th.
Okay. We have another one on the 27th. We have something else on the 27th. Okay. All right. Again, thank you, John. Administrative review. We actually have a meeting coming up. I think that's what's on the 27th.
27th is, no.
No? Well, it doesn't matter. It's on the, I know there's something on the 27th.
But the SLEA meeting is on the 26th.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Administrative review, we do have a meeting coming up. It is
October 27th.
October 27th, yep. CTE.
So CTE has not met yet, so we haven't reorged, so there is not a chair yet. But after our discussion this evening, I'm sure that the members who were appointed last reorg of the larger committee will reach out to Elliot and see if we can come up with a common time to meet.
Okay, very good. Chairman's correspondence, I don't have any correspondence to report. Legislative agent.
So the FY23 budget at the state level finally came through, and we saw a 6.4% increase from the state of Massachusetts here in Silver Lake. So I know that the burden often feels like it's on the towns to support our schools, but the state really came through in a big way for us this year. And that is definitely due to the hard work of Rep. Lenatra and Senator Moran and Senator Brady. I had extensive conversations with them and their aides, Chris, Tara, and Al, throughout the budgetary process. I'd also like to publicly thank Senator Ann Goby and Senator Bruce Tarr for some of the amendments they added to the Senate budget. They were pushing for the $100 per pupil minimum increment and also for full funding of regional transportation. A year ago at this very table, I warned the committee that regional transportation funding was under threat. And we actually saw fruition of that threat in this year's budget. It was level funded from FY22 to FY23, basically funding 85% of the regional transportation expenses for Silver Lake. Already working with Rep. Lenatra and Senator Moran to try and get that back up to 100% for next year's budget. As Jill mentioned, we worked really hard with Project Bread to realize free school meals for all students in Massachusetts. We know that students who have full bellies do better in school and have less disciplinary issues at school as well. So really thank the Massachusetts legislature for pushing that through. We really still believe that this is a federal issue, and at the federal level, MASC and its partner, NSBA, is pushing on the USDA to make this a federal program once again, that all students in the United States of America can expect to have free and nutritious breakfast and lunches available to them at no cost. We're also continuing to push for the full funding of the IDEA law. Statutorily, they're supposed to pay for around 40% of extraordinary special ed costs at the federal level that then trickles to the state and would come to us. Currently, it's funded at around 16%. So that could double the amount of federal dollars we have for special ed. This is a bipartisan supported bill, bicameral supported bill. It's still, I have no idea why this doesn't get passed. Year after year, we talk about it. It gets put to committee, it comes back for consideration, but it's never made it to the floor for a vote. Also working with our Massachusetts legislative delegation to extend the deadline for schools to use their ESSER 3 funds. We were in Buildings and Grounds, the SAFER subcommittee meeting earlier, and Matt Durkee was telling about how hard it is not only with supply chain issues, but with labor shortages and just getting projects done and spending these ESSER dollars for certain school districts has become a little bit more difficult than we anticipated. And we also have that pressure from communities not to just spend money willy-nilly, to make sure we're doing our due diligence, vetting the projects that we're putting these monies towards. Currently, all of the ESSER 3 monies have to be encumbered for a project by September 30th, 2024. We've asked our state delegation to try and help extend that deadline to March 31st, 2026. So we can take the time and really put those dollars to use in areas that they're going to be needed. So that's my legislative update.
Thank you. Anything for negotiations and employee relations?
We have an executive session.
I was just going to say we have an executive session. I don't know if there's anything else to say there. Unless there's something. We did vote last meeting, and Gordon is the chair of that meeting now. Kat.
The first meeting of the year isn't until October. So it's going to you'll need a new representative.
We will need a new representative.
When's the next school committee meeting?
The 26th.
End of October.
So, I don't know, maybe Jason, you can chime in on the protocol since Paul is not here, but I think it might be worthwhile for someone to take on that role interim, at least to start, because you're not going to have somebody for the first two meetings if you don't select somebody tonight. So I can formally step down as PAC chair, and you all can, I just would suggest you vote somebody tonight, even if it's just interim, to participate. So who wants to do it? They're meeting still virtually, so it's kind of an easier participation. And it's really worthwhile. And they're a great group of people, and they're doing some incredible work.
How frequently are they?
Once a month. And they're really good about keeping it to an hour. That's my sales pitch.
Sorry, another question. What night of the week is it?
Oh,
float or?
They're set. Hold on.
The 6th is Thursday.
Yeah, hold on.
October 6th.
27th is a Thursday.
Is it Thursday then? October 6th, this is Thursday.
October 6th. She says they may be Thursdays then. They were Tuesdays or Mondays last year. I don't know if she said it was cadence yet, but I know the first one's the 6th.
One last question, what time of day? Or
Oh, they're like at 6 o'clock or something like that.
I can definitely, if no one else wants it, I can definitely do the interim. I don't know that I can make a commitment for the full year. That's the only caveat.
Do we need a formal motion for you to step down first, Leslie, or are we all set on that?
No, it has to be a formal vote to appoint the new person, and we need to send a letter to PAC to make it official.
Okay. So I move to appoint you the interim PAC committee. Appoint person.
Do we have a vote?
Is anybody else interested? I mean,
You second that, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. All in favor of Amy being the interim PAC representative?
I'm going to abstain. It's awkward.
vote for yourself. Anyhow, appreciate you doing that because I think it's good to start the school year off with representation.
We'll sit together. All right, just
Yeah.
policies.
So we do have a few new policies that are popping up, nothing that's super pressing at this moment. Again, I would just like to reiterate my profound thanks for the members of the policy subcommittee, which is a joint committee of all 4 school committees, for getting themselves together this summer to make sure we're doing the business of the districts.
Thank you.
Revolving funds, okay. No report, but at some point we should probably kind of take a look at them and maybe just explain a little bit more to the committee about how they're funded and their purpose and everything, since we do have, and we'll be having another new member, so.
We just do that.
Yeah. Safer.
Before we start, I'm sorry, just before you start, when you were out of the room, I stepped down as PAC chair and we voted Amy in as interim.
Oh, okay, excellent.
Just because the next meeting is October 6th and y'all don't meet again until the end of October.
Okay, all right,
Or middle of
excellent.
October.
Yeah, all righty.
So I forwarded her Dick's email, but she also did send a letter.
Okay, yes, they do. Okay.
Thanks, sorry.
Oh, no. Safer.
So Chris Eklund made this job very difficult to step into, but I will endeavor to do my best. We'd like to establish the first Tri-Town meeting for December 1st at 5 o'clock in the evening. During that discussion, we realized that we'd have quite a few town officials participating in that conversation. And we wondered if it would be the will of this committee, and then we will have to ask the other 3 committees, if they would be willing to move the joint meeting we currently have scheduled for the 17th of November to 6 o'clock on the 1st, so we could have the town officials just have to come to one meeting, but achieve 2 goals. So it wouldn't be a change to the school calendar, but it would be a change to our published meeting dates that we agreed upon with the other 3 school committees.
Right. Can we reach out on that and see if that date, okay.
So would you want to hold off on changing that date, or do you want to?
Well, we need to make sure it works for the other committees.
Okay, so you guys are going to do it like through the chairs informally, and then we can vote it in each committee?
I'm sorry, we still talking about just moving the date?
Do you not need a vote to move that
To
date?
move the date of the joint committee meeting?
Can you chairs take care of it from your end?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Right. Perfect. And the next item is that Elliot Glass talked to us about the driver's ed program, which is currently being offered at $650, which is substantially under private vendors, and it's even under the other public schools in the area's price of around $700. We've had some increases to the program from our budgetary expenditure side, and we also have a vehicle that is now over 100,000 miles in driver's ed, which is a very uncommon feat to have a car last 100,000 miles with novice drivers. He would appreciate a vote to increase the fee for the driver's ed program from $650 to $700 to help start building a little bit of cushion in that budget in order to prepare for the purchase of a new vehicle.
So moved.
We can, so is there a second?
Second.
Okay.
So, I'm sure there's been a lot of discussion on this, but I'm just curious. I mean, I think a lot of families choose the Silver Lake program because it's more reasonably costed versus some of the private programs around. So I'm really reticent about raising the fee on that, and maybe not using some other alternative approach to this, because, I mean, I know the private courses are upwards of several $100s more than that, and I think families are having a tough time affording driver's ed nowadays, let alone us increasing the cost. I mean, I think it's a great program that we offer as an alternative to one of the private programs, but I'd be really nervous about raising it any higher than it is, just so we can build up a reserve to pay for a new car.
It's not just to pull up a reserve for the new car. It's also in lieu of the fact that the cost expenditures on the program side have started to eat into what's in that revolving account. So that revolving account, if it's sustained at the $650 per student level currently, might need assistance from us before we even need the new car, from our budget side of things.
Yeah, we're in a losing model.
When's the last time that it was increased, do we know?
We didn't get the historical reference the last time it was increased. Elliot was extremely proud of the fact that it was below even the other public schools average in the area, and this is something that he reluctantly came to us with.
I think it's been over 10 years. I can pull it up.
That's phenomenal if we've been able to hold it steady for that many years.
Just for reference, Sullivan in Kingston is 900.
Wow.
450 just to put a deposit down.
I can just add one thing. I am a parent whose daughter just went through the driver's ed program, actually hasn't done her driving hours yet. We were happy with the price. I was pleasantly surprised by the price. Another reason a lot of parents are choosing it is the convenience factor. But you've got a kid who's not driving yet, they're in school. It starts at 4 o'clock, they can just stay and do their homework and go to their extracurriculars and go right to driver's ed. That is a huge incentive. I don't think I'm the only parent that chose it primarily for that reason, because it was such a great service to have in the school. So I don't know if that weighs it one side or the other on raising the price, but money's tight for us, and I would not be averse to a small increase. A huge one would be a big issue, but a small one would probably not.
Has it been, Michaela, has it been?
It's not in the email that I thought it was in, but I do recall him saying it's been about 10 years since we've had a fee increase. We also do provide families with assistance if they need to do a payment plan, and so it has sometimes taken a family up to a whole year to pay it in full, and that's okay, we work with them. Whereas I think a private company, you pay before you go.
Any further discussion on this side? All right, all those in favor of increasing the fee? Raise your hand. Okay, those opposed? Okay.
And so Matt Durkee was there, let us know about some of the work that was done over the summer. Again, cost increase of materials, supply chain issues, getting those materials, labor shortages, all impacted the work that we were able to do, but Matt and his team worked around that. Whenever they couldn't do some of the larger projects on the list, they did a lot of the little projects on the list. They retouched the sidewalk near the track to make it easier for snow removal in the winter and to eliminate some erosion issues they were having. They created a swale down near the water treatment plant because that's actually downhill below grade, and a lot of the runoff from rainstorms ends up going into our holding tanks, and then we're processing water that doesn't need to be processed. The middle school courtyard, in between concrete, every few bricks, there's a rubber gasket. It's for expansion during, warm days for thermal expansion. Grass was coming up through that caulking, so they stripped it all out and put used caulking in, so it looks nice and clean and new out there. The ADA ramp for Sirico seems to be coming in potentially lower than the $75,000 we put in, with some creative design and some existing infrastructure that meets ADA compliance for the level of ramps. We might be able to actually realize some savings on that project. Matt also had a lawnmower in the capital plan for this year, but that lawnmower currently, if we put the money down on it, is 1.5 years from delivery. So they put some time into looking at alternatives, and they actually found a cheaper lawnmower that has more attachments that would be a better fit for the district that can be delivered in about 6 to 8 weeks from now. This alternative is a John Deere product, which comes with a front-end loader, which can help with moving snow piles in the winter. It has attachments, including a wood chipper and an aerator. Currently, we contract out for aeration of our fields. This vehicle would at least help us to do some of the smaller projects. And the mowing deck is actually bigger than the one that would have come with the other mower, allowing the maintenance and grounds crew to be able to mow the lawns more efficiently so they can get to other jobs they need to do. Martha Jameson came to us with something called the Neptune Game Time Player. And what this is a lot of kids, before they get up to bat, softball, baseball, they have like a come out song, or teams, they warm up to a certain song, and very often kids are handing people CDs or their phones, and the music isn't necessarily vetted. So what Neptune Game Time Player does is it guarantees all of the music that's coming over our intercom and PAs are going to be vetted by their people to make sure nothing inappropriate gets broadcast at a Silver Lake Athletics event. So the kids will still be able to pick their warm-up music, but it'll come through this particular subscription and then will come out over the PAs. It does have some capability for advertising. You can have a professional voiceover of our local advertising. Martha's not at that point right now. She's really just trying out the basic function. She wants to see how it works, and if it does, then maybe consider using some of those advertisements, not to make a lot of money, but to offset the cost of this program. So since SAFER is also with fees and revenue and revolving funds to a certain degree, she just brought that to our attention today.
Jason, I apologize, I didn't make that meeting earlier. We have had advertising discussions over the years regarding sports. This what she potentially might do fits within what we can do.
Absolutely. We had a pretty robust conversation about the process that we would go through for any advertisement that came out over a Silver Lake PA system. Right? So Ryan had pulled up the specific policy about how advertisements have to be vetted by the school committee. Each individual message that goes out would come before us for our approval. So the way Martha was talking about it, and this is, a year off probably. She would find 3 or 4 local advertisers, maybe through the Gridiron. They would come up with an advertisement that they'd run for a season. We'd get to see it and approve it if it was acceptable, and she'd run it for that season. Any new advertisements would come back before us, before she would put it out on the system. So,
Okay, you couldn't ask for anything more than that, so, yeah, perfect.
the tennis courts. So the surveying is done, hoping to get the project for the tennis courts out to bid by January. And currently, the plan is to get them in as soon as we can get contractors and asphalt manufacturing up and running. So I asked Martha very point blank, what does this mean for the tennis season, for our kids practicing and having games? And she's already committed to getting these courts done and getting them done correctly. She's reached out to other local schools in the area, and she's reaching out to some other indoor tennis court locales that we could potentially rent out in order to have our team not miss any of their practice time or game time while we're putting in these beautiful tennis courts for them as well. So we're making progress, but unfortunately, when we get those final plans and with the bidding process and then having to vet the bids, it'll probably be the dead of the winter and we'll have frozen ground. So we'll have to wait for the ground to kind of thaw out, and then we can put those courts in. And Paula, I know you've done some work already behind the scenes, just coordinating with the towns about the HVAC systems for the middle school and the high school, using some of the ARPA funds to help us with that as well. We hope to have, and Matt was very confident we should have, construction documents ready for that tri-town meeting, especially since we moved it back. So there'll be things for the municipal partners to really dig into and see what the plans look like and how we plan to use those funds to improve the HVAC systems in both of our schools. And last but not least, we talked about the stabilization fund that was created by town meeting. For the past several years, we've used excess and deficiency to fund the capital plan with the approval and the support from the three towns, but the excess and deficiency fund that we have, year after year, we've drained it down to a point that we're no longer able to sustain the capital plan from E&D. So last year, via town meeting, we were successful in creating a new account that we can now go back to the towns every single spring and say, these are the items on our capital plan that are coming up, and ask them for a certain dollar amount to be invested into that fund. And so it'll act much in the same way that we've been using E&D for the past several years. It just gives us a slightly different vehicle to do so.
Excellent. Well, that's a great report. That was a robust hour you had.
Yeah, it was.
You covered a lot. Thank you, as always.
Thanks, Jill, for taking such good notes.
School start time.
We have not had a meeting yet this year, and I will touch base with Ryan to set up a time that would work for us to kick off at the year.
Excellent. Thank you. Treasurer's report?
Sorry. I don't have a lot to say, except Christine, this was the list of warrants. I'm not sure what else covering.
I can take care of that. There are 17 accounts payable warrants totaling $1,108,257.63. One payroll warrant totaling $236,290.10, for a total of $1,344,547.73.
I'll do that better next time.
And that's what's circulated tonight. Thank you for the introduction.
Union 31, obviously, we're talking about trying to move that meeting. Single signature warrants.
I have information on that. On August 15th, warrants were electronically sent to the subcommittee of Paula, Jason, and Lucas, and also the superintendent, and they were all signed and returned. Thank you very much. On that day, we had 15 accounts payable warrants totaling $1,015,416.75, 3 payroll warrants totaling $670,830.30, for a total of $1,686,247.05.
Thank you. Excellent, very good. Before we adjourn into executive session, which we'll need a motion to do, we have to say our goodbye. So,
Jason.
Leslie, and you shouldn't be clapping. I wanted to see tears.
No, I'm very sad. This has been an honor.
It's been an honor for us as well, and one of the things that I have really enjoyed working with you over the last couple of years is you're not afraid to put a different idea out there, a different thought, and it may not be what anybody thinks is going to be popular or what have you, but it's meaningful, it's well thought through, and it's many times put us in a different direction. And I can't thank you enough for all you've done on subcommittees and what have you, but in particular as well, the dynamic you've brought to the table for this committee.
I'll miss you all.
We're going to miss you. So, we know that you are a wine drinker. I don't know if I can start now. So we know that you enjoy a nice glass of the bubbly.
You guys are giving me a reputation.
I myself am a member of a wine club, so I'm right there with it.
All right.
So,
thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Very kind of you.
The intensity and passion. When I first met Leslie Ann, her intensity and passion, I found it intimidating. And, you would bring something up, much like Paula said, and it would make me check myself. And make me reconsider if I had preconceived notions I came to the table with, and was I thinking in the best interest of all students. And there was times where we agreed, and there was times where we disagreed, but what I loved about being on committee with you is when we'd walk away from the table, you'd always give me that big smile, and we'd have some good laughs, and you let me know it was okay for us not to always agree, but we could definitely always be agreeable, and I'll miss that.
Yeah.
I'll miss that tremendously.
Appreciate that. I spent a number of years managing commercial fisheries at the federal level, and fishermen were very passionate about what we were doing to them because we were managing their livelihoods. And there was a lot of disagreements. There were even meetings where there were chairs being thrown and police in the room. And it gave you a thick skin, but then you ended up at the bar having a beer with them. So you have to sort of figure out how to play with intensity, but part as friends in some way. So appreciate that.
And again, I'm going to reiterate what you had said a little bit earlier, and possibly some others. This is a wonderful committee. We don't come from the same backgrounds. We have different life experiences. We have different preconceived notions of certain topics, what have you. But this is a respectful, intelligent, open to communication committee that I haven't stayed on for all these years because it's difficult and it's an awful experience. I've stayed on it because it's been a great experience, but the recent mix the last few years has really been a wonderful dynamic in this committee. I can only hope that that will continue with, future membership as well.
On behalf of our leadership team, we also like to thank you for your dedication, your years of service, and your continued commitment, and always bringing it back to the student needs. And we appreciate that, especially your willingness to consider things from the perspective of all students.
Thanks. Well, I'm a product of public education. I believe in public education. And you guys are just you're doing amazing work. We just said here, our job is easy compared to yours, so thank you for all you do.
But most importantly, are you still going to come stuff cap and gowns for me?
I can do that. I totally bailed on you this spring because we put our house on the market. I totally forgot.
For now.
Yeah, I'll be around. And my kids feel that this is home, so they'll be around.
Okay.
So, I hope if they ever come back to the state. So, appreciate that. So thank you all. It really has been an honor. And whoever you all, Kingston reps, select as your new appointed representative until May, I hope you consider the seriousness, which I'm sure you will, of this seat that we all sit in, and pick someone that has some level of neutrality and compassion for the topic. got to be friends.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you all.
With that being said, I would entertain a motion.
Can I make the motion?
You know, I was going to suggest that.
I make a motion to move into executive session under MGL Chapter 30A, subsection A, subsection 3, to discuss strategy for impact bargaining for the purposes of negotiations. Executive session pursuant to MGL Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law. Approval of executive session minutes of June 6th and July 14th, and not to return to regular session at the end.
Second.
Roll call. Lucas?
Yes.
Gordon?
Yes.
Jason?
Yes.
Michael?
Yes.
Leslie?
Yes.
Yes. Emily?
Yes.
And myself as well, yes. Thank you all. It was a long meeting. Thank you.